Welcome to the All Volleyball Podcast, your whatever weekly dose of sanity in an insane world. We're going to finish up the censorship industrial complex hearing right now. We got some time to sit down and actually listen. Yesterday, we heard some really crazy things. Thomas Massie was starting his talk of treason there, and just some infuriating, stupid shit came from the Democrat Party, who just doesn't want to talk about what's going on. They just want to yell and scream about Musk and Trump, yeah, and all that shit. Mostly Musk, but we're going to be finishing it up today, ladies and gentlemen. And then I'm going to go ahead and head on over to the Stupids Play because I'm going to be playing some Civilization 7. Just bought the game. I love the Civilization series, so I'm going to try it the hell out. But we can't do anything until I start the show.
Hey kid, don't ever let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you could get. Don't let them guide your life towards regret. I'll fight for what I love with every breath. My past is filled with things I won't forget. I use them all to push me to my best. So treat the worst of times just like a test. If only I could go back in time, I'd tell myself that everything will end up alright. Just push yourself, test yourself, figure out what you like, and find your limits, don't be rigid, always work towards a prime. Surround yourself with open minds, people can change your life. A few friends with intent can help you feel alive. Find a passion, take some action, and with a little time, just be patient, make a statement, try to enjoy your life. They'll try to kick you while you're down. They wanna rise up while you drown. They wanna fill your head with doubt. They're silently scared that you'll figure it out. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless.
No funny video today, ladies and gentlemen. Just want to finish this off. We left off yesterday after Van Drew had given his speech, and I had kind of thrown out there to you guys, look, it was that Craig Calloway guy that we pointed out multiple times. Jeff Van Drew did actually hire to get elected in 2022. He knew about the situation because there ain't no way you're going to sit there and hire a guy with a 98% win rate and not think something's fishy. He used to be a Democrat. He turned Republican. He makes some good speeches, but he's somebody you're not going to be able to trust. However, his part is done now. We got about 2 hours or so left in this, so we're just going to hit it up. We're going to finish it, and we're going to keep rocking on. I know it's a little off schedule for everything that we've been doing, so I don't expect a lot of people to be here with me today, but we do have Muffin in the house. We got Polar Bear with us, and Tweaked on the other side there. But yeah, let's get this going.
Did President Trump's DOJ ever pressure big tech to silence political opponents, abusing power, if he had done it?
Okay, we were after his point, but...
Gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and the ranking member for holding this very important hearing on the First Amendment and, of course, censorship. Thank you also for all the panelists for being here. Appreciate your recommendations and contributions. Mr. Aaron, I want to turn to you first. I want to talk about Main Street, back home. We're talking a lot about theories, discussions, but back home, people care about bread and butter issues. Over the past 2 weeks, more than 8,000 web pages on over a dozen government websites were taken down, including over 3,000 pages containing healthcare information, CDC. They were taken down until yesterday when the federal judge actually ordered the public health pages put back up.
We covered this. What he was talking about was the CDC taking down pages or papers to be peer reviewed because they violated the executive order that says there is only a man and woman. And then they started yelling how everybody's going to get AIDS now because of that. That's what he's talking about.
Some of those pages, information, guidance on vaccinations, on autism. That's what people care about back home. So, Mr. Aaron, we have vaccine mandates, controversial, but regardless of where people stand, how do people react to a situation like this when the information they probably rely on, paid for by federal taxpayer dollars, research on these pages is no longer available to them?
I share your concern, Congressman. I think that we have a big problem, again, with taking the sledgehammer to all of these
This is
things.
censorship.
And is this censorship? Is that the question, sir?
It is.
Well, I want to be clear. The government, does have the ability to say, this is what we're going to put on our websites to a point. They have the ability to say, these are our new priorities, all of these things, right? The problem we have is when that is extended out to stripping away the most basic information that people need for their health. When you're talking about doctors suddenly unable to inform their patients about what's happening, we have a more serious problem. I think that's why the courts have intervened here, because of the misalignment between.
Let me cut you off real quick. I'm just looking at the cdc.gov website, vaccines and immunizations. There's a little statement here. CDC's website is being modified to comply with President Trump's executive orders. What would a parent say if they saw that?
Turn your mic on, dumbass.
I think it's just confusion. I don't think people understand, why is the government taking away this basic life-saving information? Why are they taking away information about, diseases?
The
that
Autism
people are
Spectrum
suffering
Disorder website, CDC's website, is being modified to comply with President Trump's executive order. This disclaimer is everywhere.
100%.
What's a doctor supposed to do when he reads
You're right,
this?
Kohler.
And, I share your concern, Congressman, that the idea that we're taking away basic health information, basic scientific information, making it harder for people to just know what's going on, especially when they're dealing with serious disease, serious health problems. It's very unclear to me why this would be a priority for this administration, why they would be trying to take away life-saving information that people rely on.
Is there a chilling effect here on academic research?
No question. No question. There is a chilling effect. Anytime someone has to say, before I can do my job, am I using the wrong words? Anybody who's going to say, if I make the wrong choice in what I say as an independent scientist, does that mean my funding is going to disappear?
17 inspector generals fired. How's that affect academic research, people working in these agencies?
Where is the accountability going to come from? I think that's the question. When you get rid of the inspector generals, where is the independent voice when there is a problem, when people's research is being interfered with, when government processes are broken or ignored?
Mr. Aaron, for people watching this back home on TV, what's an inspector general?
Well, as I understand it, Congressman, the inspector general, right, is an independent office within a government agency tasked with making sure that that agency is following the law, ethics laws, other laws, and the procedures of that agency. So they have investigatory power within an agency to be able to investigate and publicize.
To address fraud, waste, and
wrongdoing.
abuse. To address fraud, waste, and abuse.
Absolutely.
And so 17 of them were fired.
The only reason to get rid of all the inspector generals en masse
100%
is if you
would, yes.
don't want them conducting investigations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aaron. Run out of time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Gentleman yields back. If it's okay with our witnesses,
I will say this, Mr. Correa does walk the line, but he will step out of line sometimes. Especially during the Butler shooting. They had a hearing on that, and he was in there saying, hey guys, I was talking to the officers there, and they're saying there's a lot more here than we need to actually look into because something's not adding up. He was the first one to blow the alarm on that one. So yeah, he will step out of line sometimes, but he's He just still walks lockstep in most shit.
We'll finish the top row here, and then we'll give you a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll be back at it. So the gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo your comments from your introduction. What a difference several years makes. And while the censorship industrial complex is on the run, it is not gone. And to that, I just say, thank God for Donald Trump. Thank God for Elon Musk. Thank God for Doge, because we're uncovering that just where the tax dollars are going to fund the censorship industrial complex. Mr. Shellenberger, the UN finances initiatives related to misinformation management or supports government funding and third-party development of censorship tools and technologies, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware that U.S. taxpayer dollars have been used by the UN to develop and implement an AI-assisted fact-checking tool to label speech as misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, toxic or hate speech, correct?
Yes, sir. Very disturbing.
In fact, in 2021, the U.S. gave the UN development program $190 million in taxpayer dollars. And I verify
What's going on,
what
Queen
they've
Bee?
developed has
How you
been
doing?
tested in 5 countries: Kenya, Honduras, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Zambia. And it's intended to expand to more countries. Does that concern you?
Extremely.
The UN has also partnered with other players in the censorship industrial complex, including CrowdTangle, a Facebook Meta-connected fact-checking tool. Meeden got $250,000 from the National Science Foundation for identifying and countering misinformation on closed messaging platforms. An international fact-checking network, IFCN, a grant and fellowship-making organization to help fact-checkers, solution providers, and other eligible organizations launch new and innovative fact-checking programs and initiatives. Do you see iVerify as part of a larger global trend towards centralized control over information?
Yeah, and we didn't have a chance to get to it, but USAID has been pushing digital IDs that would tie people's bank accounts to their social media profiles. I mean, it's out of Black Mirror. I mean, the idea would be that they'd be able to police and potentially debank you for something that you said online. It's extremely disturbing, and I was just kind of shaking my head.
Yeah,
because
that
after
is
2 years of
disturbing.
this, we just keep discovering more censorship initiatives hidden away in different agencies, the UN, USAID. I mean, it's madness.
It's terrifying. You agree. Programs like E-Verify and the one iVerify, the one you just mentioned as well, could be weaponized by authoritarian governments to silence dissent. And you've seen
By our government.
this as well. And
Yeah.
well, of course, by our government as well. And Ms. Subramania, you've seen this as well.
Absolutely. I've seen the weaponization of government to go after innocent people in my own country, in Canada. The truckers' protest of 2022 was a great example of that, where people who protested, they were debanked. So if you were a grandmother somewhere donating $50 to the protest, you were frozen out of the financial system. And it has a chilling effect to the point that people are now afraid of having their voices heard. They're afraid to express themselves because the consequences of expressing yourself freely in a country like Canada, a G7 country, people are afraid to speak out. And I've only seen this in authoritarian countries that I've lived in. And that is something that should concern us all. And it's happening here.
And it's up to us to lead. And
Absolutely.
do you think that the Biden-Harris administration's hostility toward free speech contributed to the increased attacks on free speech we were seeing abroad, including pressure by foreign governments against American companies to censor lawful speech?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that question, Representative Klein. When Elon Musk's free speech rights were being attacked, and they're still being attacked by the EU under the Digital Services Act, there was silence from the Biden administration. You know what that did? That sent a strong message to the rest of the world that the administration could not be relied on to retaliate against governments that suppress the free speech rights of Americans. That's a powerful message, and that's not good.
Absolutely. We have to continue to lead. I'm glad President Trump's leading. I'm glad Elon Musk is leading. I've got a bill in to end iVerify. It's called the End UN Censorship Act. I hope we pass it in this committee and can pass it on the floor. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. We'll take a 5-minute break. We have refreshments back there if you need them. And then we'll try to get back at it as quick as we can. Committee stands in recess. Sorry about that.
Damn, they only took a 5-minute break throughout the entire thing. Okay.
Okay. Committee will come to order. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized. Oh, we got to wait for your witness. I just saw him here, I thought.
What up, Greg?
I got some UC requests if you want to.
Ranking members recognized.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask for 4 unanimous consent requests in answer to some of the things that just came up. One, an article entitled "Trump Tried to Suppress Free Speech on Twitter," published by the Washington Examiner, February 9, 2023. An article titled "Twitter Kept Entire Database of Republican Requests to Censor Posts," Rolling Stone, February 8, 2023. The Trump administration told Facebook and Twitter to remove posts that called for tearing down Confederate statues, Business Insider, June 26, 2020. And finally, an article entitled, "Yes, the Trump White House demanded Twitter remove Chrissy Teigen's tweet calling Trump a PAB," Vanity Fair, on February
Pussy ass
8th,
bitch.
2023.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. With all of the crises that the Trump-Musk tag team has created in the past 3 weeks, it's disappointing, but perhaps not surprising, that the chairman decided to waste everyone's time today by rehashing for the 3rd or 4th time a second-rate conspiracy theory that has been repeatedly exposed, debunked, and thrown out of court.
It's a
While we're
second-rate
wasting this time,
conspiracy
the country
theory,
is
ladies and
barreling
gentlemen.
toward yet another budget crisis as Republicans
None of
squabble
this
among
still
themselves.
ever happened, no
The
matter how
president
much
has turned
information
the
we
federal
found out.
government
It's
over to the
still a
author of
conspiracy
Project
theory.
2025 and an unsupervised billionaire, where they're
And let's
generating
go on
a
our
constitutional
conspiracy
crisis
theories
per
now, I
minute.
guess.
Their actions are imperiling both our national security and Americans' health, safety, and economic security. So pardon our frustration that this committee is failing to address the very real and serious issues that are confronting our constitutional republic. Now, this hearing is supposed to address government censorship of free speech. The First Amendment, which protects free speech and a free press, is the
That's
bedrock
the
of our
Democrat
democracy.
blue color.
And a democracy only works when its citizens are properly informed. But right now, both free speech and a free press are under attack by this administration and Mr. Trump's billionaire buddy, Elon Musk. In the past 3 weeks, we've seen the Trump administration use the power of the government and its big tech allies, not just to promote their own views and lies about what they're doing, but to punish or silence those who disagree. We've seen the FCC reinstate complaints made by Mr. Trump and his allies against ABC, NBC, and CBS that had already been dismissed as being contrary to the First Amendment, and seen the FCC open new investigations into other news outlets that have aired coverage with which the president disagrees. The White House has gone on a firing spree to silence the independent watchdogs who've exposed alleged corruption and misconduct by—
I'm sorry, man. What about those 34 felony fucking counts? That the only ones that actually stuck had incredibly fucked up fraudulent cases behind it? Huh. What about all that? That's not a thing. That never happened. That's a conspiracy theory, I guess, ladies and gentlemen.
You guessed it, Mr. Musk and the president. Reporters have been evicted from Pentagon office spaces to make room for right-wing media. And just yesterday, the White House barred an AP reporter from the Oval Office because AP made an editorial decision to refer to the Gulf of Mexico by the name by which it's been known for over 400 years. And we've seen books, websites, employees, research, and whole federal departments being purged of speech, information, and work, ranging from healthcare to civil rights to consumer finance, if they don't align with the Trump Project 2025 manifesto. So I agree with Ranking Member Raskin that our country is actually in a First Amendment crisis as a result of the actions taken by the Trump administration and its agents. Mr. Aaron, I wanted to inquire further about the concern raised by you and Mr. Raskin about collusion between the government and powerful tech executives, particularly in the case of White House Special Government employee, Mr.
I love how that 3-minute rant, she's just like, oh God, the right, they have so many conspiracy theories, but Project 2025 is a thing. I fucking hate people.
Mr. Musk. Mr. Musk has a long history of silencing his critics. But what's different now is that Mr. Musk is a member of the Trump administration, and he's in charge of the extremely destructive, rapid, unscheduled disassembly of congressionally authorized and funded government departments. So not only is he an unelected bureaucrat, but as with the rest of this administration, he's resisting all oversight, whether by independent watchdogs, members of Congress who have not abdicated their constitutional duties, or the press. Just last week, as national concerns were mounting about the White House encouraging Mr. Musk to root around in Americans' private financial and national security data, a Wall Street Journal investigative reporter managed to uncover concerning information about members of Mr. Musk's shadow government team. Mr. Musk called for the journalist to be fired for reporting accurate information relevant to oversight of the work he's allegedly performing at the direction of the White House, basically for performing a core First Amendment function. So can you comment on the First Amendment implications of Mr. Musk's attacks on
What's up,
journalists,
Patricia?
particularly given his new quasi-governmental status and the big tech megaphone that he controls?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I do agree with you that this is really unprecedented, where we see someone with this much government power and this much media power combined together with really no oversight or accountability.
She won't talk to anybody else.
Slashing funds that Congress has approved. We don't know what they are, but those trying to report on it, those trying to say who's going in with their laptops into the Treasury Department, into the Bureau of Fiscal Services, into all these places, downloading private information, inserting AI. Reporters are trying to get at that story. Those who did,
that's what makes them bureaucrats.
Troubling information about some of the people who've been given this immense power and access inside the government suddenly become targets themselves. And they become targets themselves because of Elon Musk's incredible social media megaphone, which he has used to put his tweets front and center and in front of everybody. So when Elon Musk said,
No, hold on. It's true. We showed it. Like, I got an account that I'm not following anybody with. I don't have any interest or anything. There is nothing that X can even throw my damn way. So everything that I see in the feed is all what Elon Musk reposted or posted himself. If you've got an account that is completely 100% unaffected by anything else, all you see is Elon Musk. It is true.
Says this person is a target, they very much become
What up,
target.
Andrea?
That is what we should be concerned about, that kind of government overreach and censorship, because Elon Musk is no longer just the head of Twitter, the head of X. Elon Musk is a special government employee, meaning he not only combining his media power, but now his massive, massive governmental.
He's not a government employee. He's not getting paid for this.
Power, which he's claiming entitles him to cancel contracts and fire people and do away. And he points all of that at a reporter simply trying to do their job. That is government overreach. That is censorship and a violation of the First Amendment, I believe.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I would request unanimous consent to enter into the record yesterday's statement from the Associated Press, in which the outlet describes how the White House violated the First Amendment by blocking its reporters from the Oval Office.
Without objection. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the witnesses being here today. The Biden-Harris White House has censored campaigns and certainly
Mr. Moore?
information, satire like our friends at Babylon Bee and other content that did not necessarily violate the platform's policies. Mr. Taibbi,
What up,
Shellenberger,
redneck?
I kind of want to dig in a little bit with you guys on the Twitter files and let y'all tell us a little bit about what you found. So, Matt, what was some of the, I guess, some of the really most revealing things you found as you were going through the Twitter files? And now Elon Musk, I understand, was a Democrat. You were a Democrat. You've admitted being a Democrat. But now we're seeing a shift. So tell me, Mr. Taibbi, what is it that causes the shift, number one? And number two, what did you find that troubled you the most as you were going through that? And then, Mr. Shellenberger, I'll kind of want to pick your brain a little bit on that too.
Mr. Congressman, thank you for the question. I don't know the answer to the question of what caused the shift. It's a mystery that we've all been trying to look into for years now. I don't know why there's a sudden concern when
I saw that
Donald Trump or Elon Musk does something, but nobody stood up, even for Democrats, when they had their speech suppressed. In the Twitter files, we found requests from the FBI that Aaron Mate from the Gray Zone be removed at the behest of the Ukrainian Secret Services. Nothing. No major media organizations covered that. In terms of academic freedom, one of the first things that we found was that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who's in line to be the head of the NIH, that he was on a trends blacklist.
Patricia, yesterday there was somebody in here that was saying like, officials shouldn't be in the Oval Office as well. Elon Musk is not an official, so therefore he shouldn't have been in the Oval Office. Bitch, I've been in there like 2 or 3 times already in my life. So I'm an official now, apparently? I don't know how any of this works, but it was dumb. It was dumb.
Twitter, that was on the first day of the Twitter files, we found that. Nothing, nobody covered that. They called it a big nothing burger. Same thing with doctors like Harvard's Martin Kulldorff or the University of California's Aaron Kheriaty. When they criticized lockdowns, they were de-amplified and or removed. So academic freedom, suddenly it's a big concern. I agree it's a big concern, but it's a concern in both places. And so it's very frustrating to see that shift. Michael, do you have a...
Yeah, Michael, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about maybe the Twitter files and too, the shift and now where you're seeing people who would normally identify as liberal maybe are now coming to the side of our party or to political argument for conservatives to say, hey, free speech matters. What you say, you should be allowed to say what you want to say in a free market. So,
my view is that Democrats will look back at giving up the free speech issue to Republicans as just a catastrophic political failure. I've changed my mind on a lot of issues, written 2 books about it, but I never changed my mind about free speech, never changed my mind about the illegality and immorality of weaponizing government. When you look at the history of it, in the 1930s, the repression by FBI was against the left.
I don't know if y'all understand this or not, but Matt Taibbi and Michael Shellenberger are old school Democrats. They kind of have most of the same beliefs that I do.
It's the radical left. You look at the defense of flag burning. That was
I say most because there are some things that I don't agree with them on.
By the left, so it's been a reversal. The left, the Democrats, came to embrace the weaponization of and censorship because they became so powerful and so entitled at ruling under the Obama administration, I believe, and the intelligence services.
I was going to ask you when you thought it started, but you said earlier about 12 years you could remember, but certainly Biden, Harris kind of doubled down on what Obama started, but go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's right. I just think Obama, after, 8 years of Obama, they transformed the intelligence community, became much more left-leaning, much more partisan. And so there's an inorganic and an organic part of the weaponization and censorship, but clearly you see people, we reported on the activities of John Brennan, Obama's CIA director, authorizing reverse targeting or bumps to basically instigate the whole Russiagate hoax. You see these partisan actors in the intelligence and the deep state agencies engaging in these activities. You see with
that
Democrats
woman in the back in the white shirt there.
Bizarre for anybody that's
she knows what
Yeah,
she's
it's like
doing.
the chairman mentioned, just the fact that IRS happened to knock on Matt's door the day he was testifying here. The whole system itself, whether it was big tech and the federal government, that is a terrifying option when you see those people working together to target the free speech of American citizens. So it wasn't just Twitter, Matt. I think we saw a memo where Meta, you said Meta actually, maybe Facebook had been targeted more, I guess, by the administration, a little more difficult to get their message out or a little more stringent on how they allowed them to speak freely. So you want to maybe...
Yeah, this committee
that was just disgusting.
did
all of that shit.
Report on the Facebook files.
All of what COVID was. That was disgusting as fuck.
Repeated requests from the White House to de-amplify figures ranging from Tomi Lahren to Tucker Carlson constantly. And we also found in the Twitter files similar communications from the same people. Also, reporter Alex Berenson found this out about his own account. From the New York Times, he found this. They repeatedly pressured Twitter to take down true information, true reports. And these, again, he's not even a conservative. He was a longtime New York Times reporter who was removed from the platform. And again, silence from the mainstream press during that time.
Yeah, I never could figure out who the fact checkers were, Matt. Anyway, I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm thrilled that I got to go after Mr. Moore because I'm hoping that our witnesses today will apply their same strict construction on the First Amendment to the Donald Trump administration. I hope it doesn't matter who you think is violating people's free speech rights, who is doing the censoring, that you will have the same ethics and the same integrity. I myself worked for the ACLU. I represented people.
Yes, bitch. Michael Shellenberger and Matt Taibbi has always been really trying to get out truthful information to the best of their ability. Yes, they have played little partisan games to get articles and information out there and things, but their information has always been valid from what I can see. So, are they going to play party lines? Probably not. If Trump does some fucked up shit, they're going to be one of the first people to really call it out. You dumb bitch, you don't pay attention.
People whose speech I did not agree with. I believe we need a robust protection of the interchange of ideas. However, today, not last session when we had these hearings, today, the greatest threat to free speech in America comes not from the media, not from big tech, but from Donald Trump.
Are you fucking serious? The biggest threat was not the people that shut you the fuck up and scared you into submission during the pandemic. That's not the greatest threat to free speech here in America, right? It's Donald Trump and Elon Musk who are actually fighting to bring it all fucking back. They're the biggest fucking threat. This is the dumbest fucking shit. You think you're goddamn intimidating. Look at the look on her face. She thinks she's intimidating. And she's not. She's an old ass fucking woman that has absolutely no power. She is a vote. That's all she is. You got nothing. You are nothing. And you want to sit there with those kind of looks and think you're intimidating as shit? I'm sorry. I'd be yanked out of these things because I'd either be laughing at them or just raging the fuck out at them. Don't you ever sit there and think you're going to intimidate me with that kind of shit when I'm paying your goddamn salary and you're going to sit there and treat me like shit? Nah, bitch. You about to have it.
Himself. And he has just made that plain. You don't even have to look around or have an investigative report. He's just telling us what he's doing. So this hearing today, unless we talk about the Trump administration as well, is not about protecting the First Amendment. Rather, it's a distraction from the fact that the Trump administration is actively working to chill speech, intimidate reporters, manipulate the flow of
talking to the person
information,
over there
and
and be like,
manipulate the American people.
you hear this stupid bitch?
All true First Amendment threats from the leader of the free world. And let's be very clear.
I'd be
Trump
laughing.
thinks the First Amendment only applies to speech he agrees with. His administration, as we've heard, is purging journalists from press briefings, silencing reporters who dare to challenge him. CNN, The Washington Post, The Hill, all evicted from their Pentagon offices. And
You mean the same ones that wrote bullshit over and over and over and over again? The same shit we had to debunk over and over and over and over and over again? Those ones who would never get the fucking clue that we know you're lying over and over and over and over again, always just to try to get you to hate Orange Man because he's Hitler? You mean those people? Yeah, they do need to go. They're not journalists, they're activists. Put some real people in there that are actually going to call it down the middle the way it's supposed to be done as journalists are. I don't mind throwing your opinion in, but I can't sit there and stand an article about, oh, the Hitler salute because he says my heart goes out to you. No, get them the fuck out. They don't deserve to cover anything in that kind of nature when you're going to play party lines like that. Get the fuck out. I don't need that information because it's a straight goddamn lie.
Replaced by outlets more favorable to the administration. We just had the recent AP kerfuffle over the Gulf of America?
I think it's actually funny. I'm not gonna lie. I think that shit's funny. AP doesn't want to call it a Gulf of America, even though Google and everybody else has already been. All right, fine, fuck it, we'll do it. AP's not. No, no, it's always gonna be Gulf. He's like, nah, you ain't allowed in here. It's an ultimate troll. It is. It's funny as hell.
Why? Because this administration does not want accountability. It only wants propaganda. Trump's own media company, Truth Social, same name as what they call the Russian news source, Pravda. Pravda means truth. Did he rip it off from Vladimir Putin or the Soviets who invented that in the first place? And it's not just the press.
What?
He's going after whistleblowers, firing inspectors general, purging career government employees who refuse to bow to his demand. He's sending a message. Speak out or simply do what you were hired for and you will be punished. And he's done this before. He's done it in court cases. He's done it.
Ma'am, do you remember people getting fired from their jobs because they were saying there were only two genders? Do you remember people being literally nixed from everything, even had bank accounts shuttered for shit like that? Do you remember that? Yeah, that was under you guys, the first 2 years of the Biden fucking administration, where you guys owned everything and you did as you pleased. And this is what we are talking about now. And for you to sit here and say, oh, look, he's doing this and this and this to get our activists out of there so we have no control. Now he's trying to silence us. Oh, fuck you. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Our government shouldn't be doing anything like this, and you know it. You've gone too far with your fucking powers, and it needs to be reined in.
As a private citizen, but now he has the weight of the government behind him. And that is why the First Amendment is implicated. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, if they really cared about censorship, they'd be condemning these blatant abuses of power that leave our nation.
And you tried to cover up your
but
blatant
instead,
abuses.
They either sit silently or they enable it. So let's talk about big tech.
Like how you enabled and paid for
spent years
Twitter to
attacking
remove
social
people?
Media companies, claiming they were biased against conservatives, also starting their own, all because the Biden administration flagged certain posts, including one telling Americans to drink bleach during the height of the pandemic. But now, big tech, because it's in their financial interest,
Including ones that were telling people to drink bleach? No, those were the ones that were actually fighting against the whole fact that he did not tell you to drink bleach or inject bleach. No, you were removing people who were telling the truth, bitch. Stop lying with it.
is cozying up to Trump. They're rolling back content moderation, allowing disinformation and even hate speech to spread unchecked. Reports show that Trump and his allies are pressuring tech companies, making sure their voices are amplified while dissenting.
He didn't police your speech like we did. He didn't shut you up like we did. You said anything out of line that hurt our little fifis? He's allowing you to say it now. It's hate speech and it's leading to violence. Silence is violence, but words are violence, ladies and gentlemen. So just shut the fuck up and do as you're told.
Voices are drowned out. If you didn't like it during the Biden administration, you have to condemn it during the Trump administration. Facebook, also known as Meta, has gutted their content moderation and safety teams, rolled back hate speech standards, and when Trump was asked if the decision by Meta was a direct response to Trump's threats to Mr. Zuckerberg in the past, he said, probably. Yeah, probably. So when we talk about the First Amendment, it has to apply across the board. I'm frankly glad we're having this hearing today.
And Elon
so
Musk
that we
has
have the
actually tried to do that
opportunity
across the
to
board.
raise these concerns so early in this very dangerous administration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. I now recognize Mr. Kiley for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today's hearing is an opportunity to acknowledge the jarring reality that for some years we did not have a functional First Amendment in this country.
She did.
The vast powers of the federal government were mobilized to do the very thing that the First Amendment forbids, that is, abridge the freedom of speech of American citizens. And by using its influence over a few tech companies, its ability to pressure, to influence, to cajole, the government was able to conduct
What up,
censorship
Marley?
at a scale and at a breadth that the founders could scarcely even have imagined, and took it to extremes that none of us previously would have imagined. It's now part of the history of this country. It's a chapter in our history that the sitting president of the United States was removed from all the leading social media platforms. The leader of one of the parties, of major parties in our country, was removed from the platforms. It's now part of the history of this country that damaging information about a presidential candidate was suppressed on the eve of the election. And then when it came to perhaps the most significant global event in a generation, COVID-19, the government assured that citizens were not even allowed to provide a truthful account as to how the pandemic began. You were not allowed to say 2 + 2 makes 4. And you also were severely restricted in your ability to provide your opinion on what the proper governmental response was. Folks had their posts deleted for even daring to suggest that a 2-year-old shouldn't be forced to wear a mask for hours on end each day. And of course, as the Supreme Court has repeatedly acknowledged, this has a chilling effect where folks then were forced to steer far clear of whatever that line of censorship might be. And so there, for every post that was censored, there were many, many other things that were suppressed as a result. I think this is also an opportunity to acknowledge how important the oversight of this committee was. In fact, it is likely some of the most important oversight, congressional oversight that has been done in the history of the United States Congress, is that by exposing what Mr. Shellenberger has called the censorship industrial complex, we were able to get tangible outcomes where censorship outfits were ended, specific tangible censorship operations were ended. You even had Mark Zuckerberg come out and detail exactly the governmental pressure that was brought to bear upon him. And he even went so far as to say that what Elon did for the Twitter files, Jim Jordan did for the entire industry. But beyond those specific results, I think that this oversight effort has also been successful in preventing censorship from becoming a norm in American life, which is, I think, a very important result. I mean, we forget that freedom of speech is historically anomalous. It's somewhat counterintuitive. It's not even embraced by many of our nominally democratic allies around the world today. And I think we got frighteningly close to this deeply embedded norm of our country's DNA of freedom of speech, of that starting to really weaken. And it's going to be important, I think, going forward to have guardrails in place to assure that these sort of censorship efforts don't repeat themselves. But Mr. Schellenberger, if we accept the premise, which I think is true, of course, that the censorship industrial complex is on the defensive and certainly in retreat in the federal bureaucracy. We need to stay on guard. But are there other sites where it might be reposed? I mean, you've mentioned global institutions, but in particular, our home state of California, with bureaucracies that are just as, if not more Orwellian than some of these federal bureaucracies, with a governor who has vowed to Trump-proof the state, as well as it being the home to most of the major tech companies. Do you see risks there, and how might we conduct oversight to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, our friend and colleague, Andrew Lowenthal.
I'm going to be honest before we hear the response to that. Other than the question, I didn't hear much of what that dude says because it sounded like one long-ass run-on sentence. There was no pause in between any of that. He just kept going and going and going and going and going, and then there was a question. Like, I didn't hear anything.
Just published a report about efforts at the state level to promote censorship. And as you know, one of the big pieces of censorship that Governor Gavin Newsom promoted and others promoted was having doctors be censored for not prescribing the official orthodoxy when it came to COVID. The other thing that we see is a lot of media literacy programs. They're called media literacy. They're basically just teaching kids to accept whatever the mainstream news media tell them without questioning it. It's the opposite of what John Dewey created with his critical thinking program in the University of Chicago, this incredibly important promotion of the idea of how to think critically, not relying on expert sources, always being skeptical. So I do think there's a lot of work that we need to do, and certainly our home state is a place to start.
Thanks very much. Thanks to all the witnesses for your testimony and your assistance in this entire effort of this committee, and I yield back.
That's your guy, though, man. He's from California.
Ms. Ballant, sorry, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's talk about the real censorship that's happening right now. We don't need some complicated, hypothetical, deep state plot.
Oh, you'll enjoy this
We are
one.
3.5 weeks into
This
the
bitch
Trump
is dumb.
administration, and it is actively suppressing free speech. And it's textbook authoritarianism. This whole conversation has become so twisted and so confused. So I want to bring us back to some basics. Mr. Aaron, is it accurate to describe censorship as the suppression of certain words that are considered politically unacceptable?
I think if the government is doing that, that smacks of censorship.
Yes. Is it true that the government may intentionally try to chill speech by threatening legal action or other consequences to intimidate a speaker into silence?
They may intentionally do it, ladies and gentlemen. That was the question. They may intentionally do it, right? Well, yeah. I mean, you guys intentionally did it. They could maybe intentionally do it. Everything's a possibility because nothing's actually happened yet.
That's certainly true.
So censorship can take several forms. It can be the government banning speech. It can be the government creating an environment of fear that suppresses speech. And I want to look at some of the examples that we are seeing right now with Trump attacking free speech. Last week, Trump's guy in charge of the agency that's supposed to ensure fair access to the media and internet, the FCC, his name's Brendan Carr, he opened an investigation of a radio station that reported on an ICE raid. Mr. Aaron, is the government chilling or limiting speech when it threatens to investigate?
Hold up. Bitch, you left out the part that they were actually advocating for the illegals and telling them how to get the fuck out. They were warning them about it. What do you mean? You left that part out, bitch.
Journalists for literally reporting the news.
I think it's a huge problem. The First Amendment protects the rights of reporters to cover what the government is doing. That's what the radio station in California was doing, is it was reporting on something of very important community interest. So the idea the FCC would respond with an investigation with threats is very incredibly chilling to reporters' ability to do their jobs.
Yeah, it's outrageous. These are the normal operations of any news organization. So let's see what it looks like when the Trump administration intimidates and censors Americans. Let's look at something more direct, more immediate. Trump's anti-DEI orders have resulted in a ban on using certain words in federally funded research. And my colleague, Ms. Jayapal, touched on this earlier. I want to pick up this thread. There's a list circulating at the National Science Foundation banning the use of words like disability, socioeconomic, and even women. I mean, it's completely absurd that they're searching for when the word women is being used in federally funded research. Mr. Aaron, is the government limiting speech when it bans the use of specific words like women?
If the government is saying that you will be ineligible for funding.
You know how I know that's not a fucking thing? You know how I know she is straight up lying about shit like that and trying to obfuscate what's really going on with that? Because there's a goddamn executive order saying there are only two sexes, male and female, which means man and woman. God damn. This bitch is dumb.
Based on your free expression, we have a big problem.
We do have a big problem. And Trump has made it clear that one of his biggest targets for censorship is, in fact, American women. On day one, Trump removed any mention of reproductive health resources from government websites. And this purge included information on privacy protections under HIPAA, the law.
That was because of that executive order that you had to go back through, because some of the shit you had on your site was saying trans men can bleed from their fucking holes, and that's called a period. I'm sorry, what was it? It was called a bonus hole, wasn't it?
All that keeps our health information private. The Trump administration also completely shut down reproductiverights.gov. At the CDC, officials removed contraceptive guidelines and web pages related to HIV testing. In fact, more than 8,000 government websites have been taken down in the last 2 weeks. And this kind of censorship puts American women at risk. Mr. Aaron, is the government limiting speech when it purges websites of previously public information?
I certainly think it is a terrible practice that endangers public health. The government has its own views and they can make their own websites, but the idea that they would strip away basic public health information that people need to, make sure their kids are okay, understand what medicines are, all of the research priorities, that seems far out of bounds.
Shocking. It's shocking. And I want to bring it back closer to home, my home state of Vermont. At the University of Vermont, professors are now fearing that there will be federal retribution based on what they're teaching in class. Scientists can't conduct critical research because the world's largest funder of medical research has banned, again, let me say it again, the use of the word women in research. What we're seeing on the ground is not a liberal social media industry. You want us to believe that the tech billionaires in the front row of Trump's inauguration are fighting for working people, fighting for a liberal agenda? Give me a break. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. I now recognize Mr. Fry. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm fascinated by this discussion. I really appreciate y'all lending it because I think one of the biggest issues in this last election was this censorship industrial complex. Of course,
Macbeth is coming in.
Covered a lot of that with the Twitter files and the like. And the American people were rightly frustrated that the First Amendment was absolutely bastardized by this last administration. And it happened at the presidential level.
We have to hear
If you were
her.
a doctor or if you were an individual concerned about the health and well-being of your family, it happened relentlessly. And we have seen it. And I would think that there might be some recognition on the other side that, you know what, maybe we overextended ourselves. Maybe we should not have gone this far to corrupt the First Amendment the way that we did. But I'm not really hearing that today. Congressman Fitzgerald briefly touched on the State Department's Global Engagement Center, and I'd like to continue that discussion on how the Biden-Harris administration used the GEC to demonetize domestic media outlets and conservative voices. Mr. Taibbi, the Washington Examiner journalist Gabe Kaminsky reported that after Republicans ended funding for the GEC, the Biden-Harris administration made a last-ditch effort to keep it afloat by realigning GEC staff under a new entity, the Counter Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference Hub. Would you say that this hub was just simply a rebranding of the GEC?
Yes, Congressman, absolutely. It's a rebranding. Its mission statement is identical to the mission statement of the GEC as described in 2018 legislation.
Is the rebranding of the GEC an attempt to continue censoring information then, particularly conservative voices that the former administration and its allies deemed to be bad information?
That would be my impression. I think it's important to talk about what Gabe Kaminsky found when he did his series in the Washington Examiner, that the GEC was funding organizations like the Global Disinformation Index and the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, so American money, taxpayer money sent overseas to foreign entities, which in turn are scoring domestic media outlets and sending that information to digital advertisers like Xandr and other companies. So we have upranking of the Washington Post, Politico, NPR, downranking of the Federalist, Washington Examiner, and other organizations. So we're picking winners and losers. And I say this not as a political conservative, but that's the facts of the situation, is that that's what that money was going for.
Thank you for that. And what role do you think Congress should take to stop those practices from occurring in the future?
I think that, the idea of preventing the spending of money on media scoring operations and picking winners and losers, that's not the government's job to try to help one media company succeed over another. That's one of the reasons why we have such terrible media, frankly, is because companies that do a terrible job reporting, they should be accountable to the
Good
market.
point.
And when they have
Good
artificial
point, Marlene.
ability to survive thanks to these subterranean maneuvers, that's one of the reasons why we have such a bad press.
Yep, I'd agree with you on that. Following this committee's work last Congress, a group of advertisers actively colluded against conservative media shutdown. Mr. Shellenberger, what role should Congress, the FTC, the DOJ have in preventing the next GARM from resurfacing and colluding to the detriment of speech?
Eternal vigilance. I mean, and God bless you all for what you did around GARM. I mean, it was incredible. You know, this was one of the stories that we uncovered. We had a whistleblower bring to us something called the Cyber Threat Intelligence League, which was an early censorship effort in 2019. And they were basically taking all of these military tactics developed abroad for counterinsurgency, repurposing them into a new manual, a new handbook for how to do it at home. And it included this advertiser pressure, which has been a key component of it. So you can see multiple things are going on. They're creating these supposed non-governmental organizations to then flag information to be censored, and they're putting pressure on the advertisers. They're trying to change the terms of service at the social media companies. I mean, one of the things that Matt just talked about is this group Internews, which we just discovered like 5 minutes ago, which has been spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and the head of it has been out there, World Economic Forum, advocating, pressuring advertisers. That's our taxpayer money going to an organization that's out there demanding pressure on advertisers to demand more censorship of social media platforms.
And so by default, at least under the old regime, the American taxpayer is funding the demise of the First Amendment if we don't do anything about it.
And the good news is that if you defund the thought police, there's not that many there's not many people out there that want to independently fund the thought police. And so if the government stops funding it, we do think it'll shrink quite a bit.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Ms. McBath for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank each of you for being here today and giving us your witness testimony. I have read your testimonies.
There have been a lot, but they do their speeches and get up and leave, and then some more come in.
Protections. We're given the chance to be a better informed and more expressive society, but with such privileges comes a great deal of responsibility.
She came in as the dude before her was giving her speech. She ain't been here this entire fucking time. By the way, she looks like a goddamn pug. Anyway.
Many of us get our information from the news, and yes, we're getting it from social media too. We share our musings or our special moments and photos of our meals. Many of our children are either or they will soon be on social media, and we'll have
she'll
a
only
direct
talk
line
to that
the
Aaron
world
dude.
with all its information and misinformation. As online bullying grows in its prevalence, the role of regulation and responsibility of social media companies becomes substantially significant. In the same way, you cannot believe everything that you hear and everything that you see. You cannot trust that people will be any more honest online behind the veil of the internet and a keyboard. On many of these social media sites, a 50-year-old man can pose as a 15-year-old girl, and a potential predator could pose as your child's very best friend. Sensitive information like personal details or photos are too often shared without the consent of those depicted, and we've begun to see the terrible impacts of bullying online and shaming. There are far too many stories of parents that are losing their children to self-harm because these companies either don't take action fast enough or downright fail to implement policies to keep our kids safe.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Where is the parents in that? People know the internet is a savage place in the first damn place. Where is the parents in that? Because I'm pretty sure that that parent is already breaking the ESRP guidelines. You know, that rating system that's on games, you got kids in there playing mature games on an audio setting with adults. What do you want? We need to make it safer for kids so they can sit there and watch blood splurt all over their screen, but yet we can't call them a stupid fuck. Okay.
We recently celebrated the passage of my bipartisan law to protect our kids from online exploitation and empower law enforcement to catch predators who have
Now,
sensitive
this
or
I agree with.
explicit material. And I want to recognize those families of young people who have been lost to instances of online targeting for their courage and strength in sharing their stories. I know how difficult it can be. And we're grateful to have you with us in the fight to change our laws and hold these companies accountable. But let's be honest. Today's hearing is a distraction and undermines the very real pain and confusion that far too many families feel when some of the most
Yes,
powerful
Joe.
tech companies in the world
Then we got
fail to
Joe and
protect our
Joseph.
children.
All right.
Social
What
media
up,
companies
Joseph?
bear the
How you doing?
responsibility of preventing harm and monitoring sensitive content that
I
can
missed that last
endanger
comment.
our loved
I
ones
thought that was
and
Joe in the
should
last one I
not be
highlighted from you.
intimidated by the powerful few when enforcing safety standards. Those of us on this side of the aisle, at least, are focused on the needs of American families over the needs of a wealthy few who attempt to control the flow of information online and in our media.
Hold on, man. You're worried about families now? After everything you did to destroy our incomes and everything like that, everything you did to try to shut us up. Why is there no chin now? I'm sorry, I just scrolled out on that one. But after everything you did to destroy our incomes, our livelihoods, to shut us up, to make us just do as we're fucking told, take the jab or you don't have a job, you can't go out into society, you can't do a damn thing. Some places you couldn't even walk outside. After all of that shit, you're going to sit there and say that Republicans who are letting free speech happen again are not doing enough to parent your child. Your child. The government isn't doing enough to parent your child. That's their job now, not yours. Huh?
We will hold them accountable. Mr. Aaron, my question is for you. If social media platforms are prohibited from enforcing their community safety standards and news media outlets are unable to carry out responsible journalism for fear of retaliation by extremely wealthy individuals, how are these platforms likely to change?
Well, I do think we have a concern if, social media platforms aren't able to make their own decisions as private companies about and be responsive to the needs of their users who have asked for them to, address the kinds of threats and dangers that you're talking about. And we want them to be able to do that without fear of government retribution. Their own users are not telling them that they want them to keep up hateful content, calls to violence, and obviously anything illegal they should act on, but their own users are asking them to moderate content to improve their experience. I believe that as private companies, they do have their own rights, their own speech rights to make some of those decisions. If we force them, I think that's a problem. I don't think that's the role of the government. I think it's the role of the users to keep them accountable. I've spent a lot of time haranguing these companies, as I'm sure others have. We're going to have to continue to do that. I think when it comes to the media, obviously, if they are living in fear of retribution, they are under the thumb of the administration. Their bosses are signaling that they will not back them up when their journalists are out there trying to report. Then we have a serious concern, and I think a real threat to free speech.
Well, thank you so much. And I think we're on a slippery slope here in this country. And just thank you for your testimony, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to our witnesses. Today, we are here to discuss censorship. And one of the most alarming fronts in the battle against censorship is the left's early attempts to control and to
Who is that guy? He is the Democrat witness here. He's the one that's trying to say all this censorship is good because people might get their fifis hurt.
overregulate artificial intelligence. Instead of fostering innovation and ensuring AI serves the American people, Democrats have rushed to impose sweeping limitations and restrictions. Restrictions that have silenced voices, that have distorted facts, and that have the potential to undermine our competitiveness in the global stage. There's growing evidence that artificial intelligence chatbots and models refuse to answer certain questions or can give skewed responses based on political bias. The Biden administration and blue states pushed
Same thing.
heavy-handed regulations with an approach that wasn't protecting Americans from real harm, like China's AI-driven propaganda or deepfake fraud. Instead, it was about controlling speech. Some proposals even suggested that AI-generated content should be pre-approved by the government. That's not guardrails. That is a ministry of truth. America leads the world in technology because we champion free thought, open debate, and competition.
Yeah,
If
fuck
we
that.
overregulate AI and stifle free speech, we won't just lose those values, we lose our technological edge to nations who do not share our commitment to freedom. Mr. Taibbi.
I will say this, though, Joe, that protest that I went to, that me and Abel were supposed to go to, but Abel backed up. I will say this, there was a lot of motherfuckers that broke that law then. Yeah. Including me.
I would like to start with you. Do you think AI censorship has the potential to be more insidious than social media censorship because it's baked into underlying algorithms, making it harder to detect by the average user once it is there?
Congresswoman, thank you for the question. I absolutely do think that. In fact, that was a critical reason I think that a lot of us were alarmed. When we worked in the Twitter files, we were very fortunate, thanks to the freak accident of an over-caffeinated billionaire deciding to dump all the stuff into the public. We got access to all these emails showing the decision processes that led to all these different people being flagged or censored or removed, on the left and the right, frankly. But AI has with that technology, there's the possibility that there would be no trace of anything. You could just give it some general guidelines and the entire process could be automated and it wouldn't leave that kind of a trace for us to sift through later on. That's why I think there was a significant alarm, from what I understand, talking to sources in Silicon Valley last spring, that after having some discussions with the Biden administration about their plans for AI going forward, that was one of the reasons why there was a sudden shift in the donations from Silicon Valley from one party to the other.
And if AI models are programmed to reinforce one political perspective while shutting down another, what impact do you think that will have on the public discourse, most especially for our young people who are receiving a significant amount of information from chatbots and artificial intelligence?
Well, I think it's very scary, because one of the things that we found, again, in the Twitter files is we were asking ourselves the question, well, how are they doing this? How are they picking which topics to look at or which posts to look at? And ultimately, we figured out that essentially they were pre-choosing narratives and then looking for posts that fell into the bucket of things that might constitute violations. So for instance, things that might have promoted vaccine hesitancy, even if it was true information, even if it was somebody who took the shot and died for an unrelated reason, or somebody who had an unpleasant experience getting vaccinated, that would fall into the
Dude's in his
bucket of something
mid-40s
that
now,
would
I
promote
think.
hesitancy.
Maybe like early
And
50s.
AI would be far faster at doing the work of identifying narratives and identifying posts that fall into those narratives. Now, the thing that's offensive about this to me as a journalist, again, is that this has nothing to do with the accuracy
1970.
of the underlying material.
Yeah, he's in
It's
his
the
50s.
narratives that are important in this entire world, and that's what's scary.
Mid-50s.
What can Congress do, or perhaps more importantly, should Congress not do, to help support an information ecosystem that is fair, open, and unbiased?
Yeah, I think it's more in the direction of what they shouldn't do. Shouldn't get involved. I mean, I think the nightmare scenario is what we're already seeing play out in Europe with the Digital Services Act, where you have this
you got a point.
gigantic sort of
Just
retinue
because
of
somebody's
what
yelling
they
at
call
you
trusted
doesn't mean you can
flaggers
assault
going
them.
through information and constantly deciding which narratives are acceptable, which ones aren't. That's what we can't have. We cannot allow that to exist either formally or informally, which is what we saw already happening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ranking member, to the witnesses here today. As my colleagues have said, the free press has played a fundamentally important role throughout American history. Investigative journalists have exposed corruption, exploitation, discrimination, and yes, government lies. So for all those reasons, I'm a little surprised that my colleagues from across the aisle, my Republican colleagues, would have chosen to revisit this topic. After all, it draws attention to the fact that Shadow President Musk, who's currently serving as a quote-unquote special government employee, is also using a social media platform that he owns and controls to circulate deceitful propaganda on behalf of the regime that he serves.
I want you all to understand, this man is brand new. He just hit Congress. How the fucking something like this is he actually just going? Maybe it's a full committee. It's got to be, because it takes a long time, but it's weird because I rarely ever see freshmen in a hearing like this.
Mr. Aaron, let me ask you a few questions. How do lies coming from someone designated as a government employee damage the flow of accurate information to the American people?
Well, I think the American people have an expectation that their leaders should be doing everything they can to tell them the truth. So obviously, if they're being fed falsehoods, that's a huge problem, and it creates, obviously greater distrust in government, and often, obviously leads to things that government leaders don't want the public to know about.
And have you seen those types of falsehoods on exhibit since the President Trump was inaugurated?
Well, I imagine there's a long history in the government of some people not telling the truth. Certainly, President Trump has very often misled people, relied on falsehoods, exaggerations, and the like. And yes, I think it's very concerning.
And what does it mean for a democracy when its richest citizen is using both major social media platform that he owns and his official status as a special government employee, what that title gives him, to undermine the free press?
Well, I think that the American public has a lot of people are questioning, what power does that title give him? Where are the limits on Elon Musk's power? What is he being allowed to do? And for him at the same time to be able to control a powerful social media platform and dictate those terms, it's one thing to be the leader of a media company. It's another to be a leader of the government. When those two things are combined, I think that is where we get into a very...
He's not a leader of anything. He's just making recommendations to people. Y'all look dumb.
Very troubling area.
And that's the ride that we're in right now. One last follow-up, Mr. Aaron. Since Shadow President Musk stood next to President Trump to make the claim that, quote, all of their actions are maximally transparent. When leaders use the tactics you just described, are they generally trying to be more transparent or less transparent?
Well, in my experience, Congressman, when they're so loudly proclaiming how transparent they're being while not sharing information, that usually means people are covering things up. And
projection much there, Mr. AA Ron? Hold up. Wasn't the Biden administration saying they were going to be the most transparent ever, and then immediately saying Jen Psaki was saying, "I'm gonna circle back on that. I can't tell you about that." And then Karine Jean-Pierre saying, "I can't talk on this because of this reason. I'm not going to tell you about this. I have no further thing to say on this." Didn't all that happen? So when they do that, but still scream that they're the most transparent presidency ever, there's a lot of projection in there, isn't there, Ron? Huh?
Don't want the public to know what they're doing.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Sir, I yield my time to the chairman.
Appreciate the gentleman yielding. Mr. Taibbi, is censoring false speech okay?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, no, the government has no role. I was
Not supposed to censor false speech, not supposed to censor wrong speech, not supposed to censor stupid speech. I mean, you know, Congress is guilty of doing
I want to
stupid
censor
speech
stupid
every day.
speech.
You're not supposed to do that. Because we have a
It
First
physically
Amendment,
hurts
and the
me,
answer to
Mr.
stupid,
Jordan.
False and wrong speech is more speech. That's the First Amendment in and of. I mean, that's it. Is
That's
that
right.
accurate?
Yes, it is.
But it was particularly troubling in the last administration that they censored so much speech that wasn't false. And that would have been bad. That'd have been wrong. That's a violation of the First Amendment. But they censored so much, and you've referenced it multiple times, whether it was Dr. Bhattacharya or Mr. Berenson, a
Stupid
journalist from the New
speech
York
should
Times,
not be
things
protected.
they said about COVID that actually turned out to be true, and that was censored.
Right, that was censored, and then, but the most dangerous misinformation of all is almost always comes from the government under the previous administration, and possibly even this one, who knows, but the Biden administration was consistently wrong in its COVID messaging.
I think they were wrong about everything. They told us that it didn't come from the lab. Sure looks like it did.
Oh, I know it is.
Number of government agencies that they, I think, got all the smartest bureaucrats in the world say it came from the lab.
It would never
I think
happen.
including the FBI.
What do you
for goodness
consider
sake. We've got a
stupid?
lot of problem with. They said it wasn't our
That
tax
could never
dollars
be
used at the lab.
answered.
Yes, it was. They
There
said it
are
wasn't
some
gain of function
things, but
research done at the lab. Yes, it was. They said the vaccinated couldn't get it.
it's too
Yes,
nebulous.
they could. They said the vaccinated couldn't transmit it. Yes, they could. They said masks work. No, they didn't. And then they said the 6 feet social distancing was based on science. And Dr. Fauci said in the deposition, I was there, and he said it's kind of made it up. It wasn't based on science. So I think that they were 0 for 8. But that's exactly the stuff. If you disagree with any of those 8 positions, that's what they attacked. So it was even worse. It wasn't like false speech, which is bad enough. It was actually accurate stuff.
Yep.
And you have to take my word for it. Mr. Zuckerberg wrote the committee a letter and said it was those kind of things relative to COVID that the Biden administration, day after day, pressured them to censor. That's scary. And here's the thing we've forgotten. I don't think this has come up. I don't think it's come up in the hearing yet. We've been at this
Hold on.
3.5 hours. That administration actually tried to set up a commission to police speech. It was called the Disinformation Governance Board, as if a bunch of other bureaucrats could further tell us, no, you can't say that. They were going to do it. What was her name? Miss Jankowicz. Jankowicz was going to lead this thing. You're like, what? This is crazy. So, Miss Supermind, we were pretty close to being as bad as all the other countries you've talked about. And frankly, your country, Canada, we were right there, but for the work of folks like you and others highlighting this. I'll let you finish up and talk about just how dangerously close the United States, with the Constitution, with the Bill of Rights, with the First Amendment, with free speech, how close we were to having a disinformation governance board, for goodness sake.
Absolutely. Here was an unelected bureaucrat who was going to tell you what the truth was. And she was going to be the arbiter of the truth. And I think the United States came pretty close to the kind of situation that you see in Canada. I just want to say a quick thing about billionaires. You know, billionaires have come up in the conversation here quite a bit, but I don't recall anyone objecting to George Soros. I don't recall anyone objecting to Bill Gates.
Hold on.
All of these people were meeting.
Hold up. Newly elected DNC Vice Chair David Hogg using platform to solicit donations for his own PAC, insiders say doesn't give an oink. David Hogg is being a pig, according to the Democratic National Committee insiders who are already slinging mud at the new party vice chairman. Barely 2 weeks into his tenure, Hogg has been leveraging DNC contacts to blast out messages soliciting donations to his own political action committee, from which he draws more than $100,000 in compensation a year, according to the Federal Election Commission records. David Hogg here. I was just elected DNC vice chair. It's a huge win for our movement to make the Democrat Party more reflective of our base, youthful, energetic, and ready to win. This dude's head is like bent sideways. It's weird. It's like lopsided. From his jaw, it just like curves outward. It's weird. You see it? He's deformed. There's something not right about that. Anyway, reads one of the 8 texts he sent out in the DNC's vast database to numbers, solicitation text, solicitation text include a link to Hogg's Leaders We Deserve PAC. David Hogg talked about living up to your name, a tough words. All right, slow it down. David Hogg talked about living up to your name. A tough DNC dollars all for him, and he doesn't seem to give an oink, a top Democrat grumbled to the Post. Hogg co-founded Leaders We Deserve. If that's... I get it. It's one of those cheap little underhanded shots, but that's like coming from the... you're still playing in the sandbox with that. Oh, he doesn't give an oink, referencing that his last name is Hogg and it's a pig noise, and he's just funneling up money. Can we grow the fuck up with that kind of thing and get offensive again? Because that's just dumb. Anyway, Hogg co-founded Leaders We Deserve in August 2023 when the stated goal of electing young progressives to Congress in state legislatures across the country. It also provided him a 6-figure income right out of college, in which he's skyrocketed up into popularity, standing on the backs of dead children where he wasn't even at that area. Yeah, he came up after a school shooting, and he wasn't even there. Well, he was there, but he wasn't there. He became the face of everybody. We'll just leave it at that. It's a weird-ass story for him, though. Hogg's appointment to the party vice chair at just 24 makes him arguably the most powerful Zoomer in the United States, but at least some members of the party were alarmed by his lack of experience and a long history of social media posts supporting far-left positions like defund the police and abolishing immigration and customs enforcement agency. He wanted to defund the police and abolish ICE. I mean, it's just very frustrating to be in a party in desperate need of increased accountability for our struggling leadership and watch somebody who has never been held accountable ascend to leadership, said Cameron Caskey, a fellow Stoneman Douglas survivor. Reached by... Oh, yeah, that's it. I forgot which one it was that he came up from, but yeah, the Stoneman... Yeah, okay. I mean, it's very frustrating to be in a party in desperate need of increased accountability for our struggling leadership and watch someone who has never been held accountable ascend to leadership. She's right, though. This dude has never been held accountable for anything he has ever said or done. And now he's the vice chair of the DNC. I mean, that's the dumbest thing the DNC could have ever really fucking done. Your party is fucking over. And you keep doing this shit. It's weird. Reached by phone, Hogg told the Post he was not doing any more interviews and then hung up. David has already raised money for the DNC since becoming vice chair, and many times before his spokesman later emailed. How the hell are you going to start funneling money into your own damn campaign in your own damn pocket in a shady, maybe illegal way? I don't know if it would be illegal to do that. I don't know how that shit works with them, but 2 weeks in and this is what the fuck you do? And then you're just going to say, I'm not taking any more interviews anymore. Like, dude, after... I guess this is, the thing where Biden was talking about throwing the gold off the Titanic. I guess that would be part of that, wouldn't it? But anyway, let's get back. I just wanted to bring that to y'all's attention, too, because that just came up in chat.
Politicians on the other side of the aisle and setting the agenda behind closed doors. What's different now, in my opinion, is the fact that we have transparency. It's only been a few weeks, but the fact of the matter is that Musk posts everything online. President Trump has been extremely transparent about what he's campaigned on, and he's carrying out that agenda. So I welcome the transparency. It's still early days. This administration should be criticized if they're crossing the line and where First Amendment rights are under threat. But the transparency which we see right now is very welcome. And so I just find that the hypocrisy of picking on one billionaire and leaving out the rest
I like
is a little
Subramania.
jarring.
Yeah, and he's maybe, when you talk about transparency, he's certainly willing to answer the press's question, probably more than any president certainly more than the last one. Certainly more than the last one. I yield back to the gentleman from Texas, and thank you for yielding.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member, and I appreciate the witnesses for being here today. I just want to break some things down for us lay people. So, Mr. Taibbi, first, would you agree that Congress is part of the government?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
and
not the
Mr.
executive.
Aaron,
Lay people? Is layman term a now offensive speech now because it's gender? Is that it? Do we have to say lay people term? What is this dumb shit? You could just say for the normal Americans or for everyday Americans. Lay people?
thank you. And Mr. Aaron, would you agree that the president, the executive branch, is part of the government? Yes or no?
I would agree.
Okay. Yes, the president is the government. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about what is a public figure. It is a person who has a
There ain't no goddamn way you just said the president is the government. By the way, this is a great screenshot because their eyes all fucked up. There is no way you just said, good, we agree the president is the government. If the president was the government, why are you there? Why do you get to hold this speech of stupidity where you're going to go on about something incredibly stupid when you don't even know about the three branches of government and your fucking position in it? I guarantee it. You think we just pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars to just sit there and speak this dumb shit? This is your taxpayer dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the new age.
achieved fame, prominence, or notoriety through achievement, luck, action, or in some cases, through no purposeful action of their own. So members of Congress, many journalists, and some of you here are public figures. And yes, the president of these United States, by virtue of the position, is a public figure. And as a public figure, under well-established law, there is a higher threshold for defamation. You have to prove actual, purposeful malice, because as a public figure, you are open to criticism.
So start spinning up lawsuits for everybody right now then. Including y'all motherfuckers. class action against the entire government. You want to talk about actual malice? Y'all had to cover your narrative to keep your power going after everything you've done to the American people. There's your malice. Where's the intent? Well, if you didn't, well, we see some of these treasonous acts going on now. So, shit. There's your intent.
We all are. So what is censorship? It is when the government dictates what you can and cannot say. Essentially tells you to shut up. It's the equivalent of a very loud shh.
That's exactly what you did.
When you don't shh, when you express yourself, when you share an opinion that doesn't square with someone's idea of truth or that they feel hurts them. Well, hello, defamation. It's lawsuit time. And so if you defame someone, they
You're
can
not on
sue
the college stage
And
anymore.
if you win, you can seek things like monetary damages, money, an injunction, precluding you from doing what you did again in the future, or a retraction. You better say sorry. My bad. But the ultimate result is to shut someone up and to make others rethink speaking up. Now, I don't think you all want to be told to shut up, or do you? Do you want to be made to shut up? I don't think so. Because that's
You were trying to shut us up.
dictating, defining what someone can or cannot say. So since 2016,
That's exactly what you were
this
trying to do.
president, now the government, has sued the Washington.
Ma'am, for the longest fucking time, yes, even Republicans were involved in that. For the longest time, the word retarded was offensive to everybody. That's starting to come back now. Faggot's starting to come back. All these things that were pushed, yes, by Republicans as well. I'll admit that. All these things that were pushed in our society that took a turn just to insult somebody, not talk about, not in a derogatory term about somebody's identity or sexuality or whatever the fuck. You tried to silence that. You tried to make us use their fucking pronouns that they made up in the back of their fucking heads. You forced that on us. And if we didn't play along, well, we were silenced. People were fired for that shit. But yet you're going to sit here and talk about how all these things right here are proof that Trump is doing it.
In Post for defamation, seeking $3.78 billion in damages over something about porn and banking. He sued ABC News for defamation, and they agreed to pay him millions of dollars and say sorry. He sued a local Wisconsin TV station for defamation over a campaign ad. Talk about thin skin. Sued CBS News for deceptive, false, or misleading acts in commerce, seeking $10 billion over an interview. And then Meta got sued for the opposite, for actually taking down Trump's account after January 6th. When January 6th did happen, people killed a member of the Capitol Police. There were cop killers.
Ma'am, look, I know the Smith-Mundt Act allowed people like you to put out propaganda, but what you were putting out was downright lies, straight up fucking lies. It wasn't just propaganda. There was no truth to any of what you were saying. You were using our money to create evidence against a president to impeach him because he was saying, go fuck yourself. You were using our taxpayer fucking money to commit a fucking coup within our government because the president told you to go fuck yourself. Ma'am, I don't think we need to go down that road, do we? Now, I know you're new, but you're too fucking dumb for this. And it shows that you just want to play party lines to get your paycheck. But if you're going to do that, stop acting like you're on a college stage. Because it doesn't work for AOC. It damn sure doesn't work for Jasmine Crockett. Like she acts like she's in the middle of Walmart screaming at somebody. It doesn't work for them. It just makes them look bad. This just makes you look like you're just trying to be a condescending cunt. But let's roll.
In that bunch who got pardoned. But I digress. And Meta agreed to pay $25 million, having some of the money go to the presidential library. Trump's friend got hired. They said no more fact checking. So in my hood, that's what somebody would call a shakedown. And then sued CNN for defamation. For one, allegedly comparing Trump to Hitler, and two, describing Trump's false claims that he won the 2020 election. So lots of defamation lawsuits from Trump, a lot of chilling effect, intimidation, silencing, and
Yes, because there was a lot of things that were untrue and actually proven to be untrue in court that they were still writing to try to write that narrative because people won't look up court records on things. They'll never see that. Why the fuck is there still a gag on our president about the court cases? Why can he still, as the president of the United States, not talk about his own personal experience within our Department of Justice?
fear. And if the government can come after CNN and Meta, then surely the government can come after any American that says something the government, this president, doesn't like. So I was struck by the CNN defamation lawsuit because Trump sued them for the use of the phrase
Yeah,
"the
they
big
literally
lie"
did
in
that
connection
shit.
with his 2020 election loss challenge. But Fox News, arguably the largest media outlet in the country, called Arizona in the 2020 election for Biden. And Trump didn't sue Fox. Same.
Ma'am, Fox News also called out, what was it? I think it wasn't Vermont. It was like New Hampshire or something like that. It was a safely blue state, but they called, no, it was Virginia, wasn't it? That they called it like 17% of the vote. And it wasn't even close as far as like being a blowout in a situation. Fox was just like, yeah, there was 17% in. We're just calling it whatever. In a very in a very hotly contested, very politically charged time frame. And it wasn't even close enough to just say, yeah, he's going to get it. I get you. It's a safe blue area, but you were playing that shit up. Why the fuck would you call it at that point in time? And then everything that happened in 2020 with the vote flip and everything like that. And yes, there is fucking fraud that has been found. 1.2 million ballots are still missing in fucking Georgia, ladies and gentlemen. What was it? The Muskegon police found 150,000 illegal registrations with about 10,000 actual ballots with caches of guns for an election fraud scheme. And they just disappeared. They caught on and just ran off. We don't know who they are. Fuck it. Hey, we caught that one, right? We broke it up. So we're good. How many others just like that got away? And of course, let's not pretend like we don't know about Craig Calloway. I brought it up time and time again, just talking about it right before at the beginning of the show. It's there. It's prevalent. We know it. We've even showed the HAVV data where the government was registering you to vote with or without your knowledge. I don't fucking know yet. I can't sit there and say that in 2 weeks in the state of Texas, you can have 6 fucking digit numbers every 2 weeks registering in the state of Texas. Because that's fucking unheard of. Even if you did badass, like with somebody like Scott Pressler did in Pennsylvania. Even if you were badass in that amount, you're still not going to get that. But then again, wasn't there that presidential order that said every federal agency, save for about 5 or 6, could register you to vote, spitting in the face of state law and the Constitution about how the elections should be run by the state? All that shit. Yeah, that was a very fucked up contested time, and it still the fuck is, because we don't know where the fuck those 7 million went.
Story, very different treatment from the president. And then there's Hitler. So a CNN correspondent allegedly compared Trump to Hitler. And then J.D. Vance, a public figure who wrote a book that became a movie, who was on the circuit promoting the book, texted a former Yale roommate actually calling Trump America's Hitler. And this America's Hitler text was shared in news outlets around the country. But only CNN gets sued and J.D. Vance gets picked as Trump's vice president. Such duplicity and a profound abuse of the laws of defamation, because it's not really about defamation. It's about censorship by this president, supported by this Republican government. And I could not find a single president in the history of this country who sued someone or an organization for defamation, nor could I find a single president who tried to lower the bar for defamation lawsuits against the media. Note, true statements and expressions of opinion are inherently not defamatory. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Whew. This committee has worked tirelessly over the past 2 years to expose the censorship industrial complex and how censorship.
I'll admit this. Hegeman, you have surprised the shit out of me. And I am sorry for my initial reactions when you got in. This is the woman that ousted Liz Cheney. I'll admit, I'm proud of you, Hegeman. You've been great.
Has permeated so many of our once trusted institutions. We have confirmed, for example, that the Biden administration pressured and coerced Facebook/Meta and other social media companies to remove true and accurate content, including the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop in all of its horrific glory did in fact belong to him and was an honest depiction of not only his life, but of his corruption. We exposed the World Federation of Advertisers, or WFA, and its evil spawn, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, or GARM, as being in reality a $1 trillion antitrust operation designed to prevent conservative media from generating revenue through advertising sales. We informed the public that their government, a government that they pay for, was using third parties to prevent them from obtaining accurate information about COVID-19 and the efficacy of the vaccines. We exposed the long-term effort by our so-called political betters to censor our speech, to prevent us from freely exercising our religion, to prohibit us from assembling peaceably, to destroy freedom of the press, and to block our ability to petition our government for redress, the 5 pillars of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. To say that what we learned is frightful and frightening is an understatement. It is the absolute antithesis of a free society. If we cannot speak truth to power, we have no power. If the government can block the dissemination of valid, legitimate, and accurate information about our very health care, then we are serfs, not free people. If the entire mainstream media complex is turned into a government mouthpiece, corruption becomes the order of the day, and freedom, equal protection, the rule of law, and accountability mean nothing. There were numerous people who helped expose this scandal, including several on this panel today, and the American people thank you. Your willingness to take on the censorship industrial complex is admirable, and it is not hyperbole to say that you had a hand in saving our republic. We also learned that this censorship apparatus was not limited to just a few federal employees, but was a whole of government approach that was launched to protect the Bidens, Fauci, Mayorkas, and others, while targeting Trump supporters and the disfavored. And here we are, the dust has largely settled and we have wrested control away from would-be dictators. Pulled back the curtains and turned the sunlight on to disinfect the dark, dank corners of Washington, D.C. Yet I am not aware of anyone who created this censorship infrastructure being held accountable for the last almost 10 years of relentless, well-funded, and well-orchestrated attempt to nullify the First Amendment. Here is my question. Are any of you aware of any political leader or federal employee being held accountable, either by being reprimanded or fired, being sued, or having criminal charges brought against them for violating Americans' First Amendment rights? Mr. Shellenberger?
The only person I can think of is Nina Jankowicz, who was basically forced to step down.
She didn't get a job.
What's that?
She didn't get the job.
Yeah, she just didn't get the job.
Mr. Taibbi, are you aware of anybody being punished?
No, I can't think of anybody.
Mr. Aaron?
Based on your description, I don't.
Mr. Subramanya?
I'm not aware of any politician anywhere on the planet, anywhere in the Western Hemisphere who's been held to account for violating people's free speech rights.
So don't you find it strange that the architects of this situation have not been held accountable for violating our rights? On his first day in office, President Trump issued an executive order prohibiting federal officials from engaging in censorship and directing reviews of previous federal involvement in censorship. And I think that's a good first step, but I don't think it's enough. I believe that Congress must act to defend the First Amendment. which is why I developed legislation with Representative Dan Bishop last Congress, now introduced in this Congress as the First Amendment Accountability Act, which aligns with the president's executive order, but it has actual teeth in it. And what my Accountability Act says, that it creates a federal version of 42 USC Section 1983, a civil rights statute. And it says that should a federal employee deprive any person of their First Amendment rights, the employee shall be held liable to that person for damages, a suit in equity, or other proper proceeding for redress, including the award of attorney's fees.
Will the gentlelady yield for a friendly
No,
question?
I will not.
For a
Mr.
friendly
Aaron?
question?
No, Mr. Aaron, do you believe that an individual employed by President Trump in the White
Shut the
House
fuck up,
should
Raska.
be able to violate your First Amendment rights to censor your speech? Yes or no?
No, I don't think it should be censored.
So I take it that you support my First Amendment Accountability Act to make sure that such an action never happens. And if it did, that you would have a remedy to protect yourself. Is that right?
I would be happy to look at the legislation and the text you've prepared.
And as to each of the rest of you, Mr. Taibbi, Mr. Shellenberger, and Ms. Subramanian, do you believe that the First Amendment Accountability Act is a good idea?
I do.
Sounds good to me, but I'd love to read it.
I support it.
Thank you. I yield back.
Just as importantly, the chair and the rank.
Like I said, she has impressed me. Well done, Ms. Hageman. And I can guarantee you, because I've talked to some of her staffers, I can guarantee you, she writes her own shit. She only relies on them to gain information. Everything she says, every committee hearing, that's her own fucking words.
Ranking members support the legislation. It's a good bill. And with that, we yield to the gentleman. First full committee hearing, the gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I got to Congress, I wanted to be on the Judiciary Committee, but I was placed in purgatory
Goddamn
with Comer.
Moskowitz.
And I was worried about all the stuff that I was going to be missing in Judiciary. Chairman Jordan started today the hearing. He said, what a difference 4 years makes. Well, apparently not, because today is Groundhog Day. So I just want to thank the chairman. He knew I had FOMO, missing out on all these hearings. And so I brought pictures of the chairman doing this hearing. So here's one picture from March 9th, 2023. He did this hearing. Then on March 30th, he did the hearing again in 2023.
Different tie. Different tie.
We'll get there. We'll get there, Mr. Chairman. Here's one from July 20th, doing the same hearing. November 30th, same hearing. Okay, February 6th, the same hearing. There's so
Each and every single one of these, ladies and gentlemen, how much do you think they cost? Look at the board. That's some thick ass board. That's got foam in between it. Each and every single one of those. How many do you think they cost? Or how much do you think each and every single one of those cost?
many more. April 11th, identical hearing. And finally, May 1st, the same hearing. So by the way, anyone keeping score, the chairman wore a red tie, 4 of those hearings, a yellow tie 3 times. But today at the 8th hearing, we are even now. Today is yellow tie day, so 4 yellow ties, 4 red ties. I tried to match you, Mr. Chairman, but mine's a little more gold. I will work on the hue, but it is the golden age. The golden age. But at least I now know what to get the chairman.
The gentleman yield?
For Christmas. Well, I'll yield in a second.
Okay.
But Mr. Chairman, don't
As
let
gay as
Comer
that
out-Comer you.
It's over
I mean, Julie's out
9,000.
there comering around with new falsehoods, and we're doing a hearing that we've done 8 times. If you need some ideas, we got some. I mean, I feel bad for the ranking member. I mean, ranking member Raskin came all the way over here from oversight. We had a vote. In fact, several of us came over here from oversight. So if you need some ideas from us, we'll gladly assist. But look, we're doing free speech, okay? So since we're doing free speech and censorship, I want to talk about a former friend of this committee and winner of the Nazi of the Month Club, Kanye West. And while there are no eggs on the shelf, there is definitely egg on your face.
After all that money he spent on those little fucking signs, ladies and gentlemen, we got one that's a lot bigger because you're too damn dumb if it don't have a visual aid of what I'm talking about.
Last week, there were an endless amounts of Nazi tweets by Kanye West. I'm going to read some of them. I love Hitler. I'm a Nazi. Jews were better as slaves. Hitler was so fresh. I can say Hitler as much as I want. It went on for days. That wasn't enough. He ran a commercial during the Super Bowl.
Put another zero on
directing
that
people to his website. And the only
and
thing the
multiply it
website
by
was
about
selling
3 or
was
4.
a shirt with a swastika. So the marketplace of ideas. They say, oh, Jared, but
That's a huge ass one actually printed out by a company. That's not like what some staffers do. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene will take those little ones that you make little road signs out of. She'll cut them out and literally glue pieces of paper on them. This is a professionally made fucking sign. Every single one of those were. The ones he was showing at the beginning had the fucking foam. They were the foam fucking signs, which means they were meant to last for a good little bit. He spent your money on all of this shit just so he can sit here and put on a show for you.
it's the marketplace of ideas. Well, as we mainstream Nazis, what happens when Nazism becomes the marketplace? The chairman said he's worried about Europe. Maybe we should go to Europe. While we're there, maybe we should go to Auschwitz to see what happens.
Because
when
this
we
is hate
mainstream
speech. He's
Nazis.
Jewish.
Mr. Shellenberger would say, but Jared, free speech is absolute. Don't be a censor. But actually, Kanye accidentally disproved that idea. He proved that free speech is not absolute. You see, what happened was he started posting porn on X. And then all of a sudden, the conservative free speech masters of the universe were outraged. Elon.
Sir. Pornographic material on a social media website like that is absolutely 100% illegal. Especially when you're doing it to cause outrage and controversy. Like yeah. Even though it's still there, unless you were explicitly a regulated adult entertainment website, you're not supposed to have it anywhere. And if you get caught doing it, it's a big fine. Now, does it run rampant on social media? Absolutely. But the things he's been posting, the way he's been trying to act, and I don't see it as a cry for help. I don't see it as anything other than trying to stay relevant and trying to keep the odd. Like, we even covered him with his wife at the Grammys in that little see-through fucking outfit. That's just like trying to stay relevant shit. You're trying to put on blast a black man who's trying to get you to react this way because you're Jewish. Dude, do you realize how stupid this looks to the American people? We all don't like his fucking talk with that kind of shit. But just because you're Jewish, you're going to be outraged in the halls of Congress? Wasn't it Nadler that said that anti-Semitism should be a nebulous statement because it will always change? Wouldn't that be controlling speech? Because anything and everything, then you could just determine whatever you don't like is anti-Semitic. And now we can't say it because we'll offend the Jews. Damn.
Elon unfollowed him and then labeled Kanye's account. So imagine if Kanye had only posted Nazi porn. Well, Mr. Shellenberger and other conservatives would be saying, well, the Nazi part is okay, as long as they keep their clothes on. So remember, if you're a Nazi, just keep your SS uniform on. Don't take it off, because that's when we're going to get to censorship. And
the fuck are you talking about?
Look, this is a hearing about free speech. My colleague from Texas said nobody blamed Biden for the cost of eggs, and he has every right to say it because it's free speech. But that is total
He's just trying
bullshit.
to stay relevant and using his
All of my colleagues were blaming Biden from eggs.
mental
Former
deficiencies as a
President
weapon.
Trump blamed him on October 26th before the election, blaming him for the price of eggs. So let's get some grip. Now, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know what grip we're trying to get here. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
if we ask our witness, but I'll ask you since it's your time. If you're going to have 8 hearings on something, I can't think of something much better than protecting the fundamental liberty that makes this, as Ms. Subramanian said last Congress, that is the hallmark of Western civilization, the ability to debate and protect the most fundamental right we have. Because all the other rights in the First Amendment don't mean squat if you can't talk. And that's what we're defending. So we should have maybe had 9 or 10 hearings because the First Amendment and free speech is so darn important. And I would just maybe ask Mr. Shellenberger, Mr. Taibbi.
He's right.
You think we could have more hearings on something this important?
Well, first of all, Congressman, thank you for your advocacy for UAP disclosure. I'm glad that we agree on that one, and I'm right there with you on that all the way. I'm with the Supreme Court on this issue of Nazism, aren't you? I mean, do you disagree with the Brandenburg decision?
So the answer.
And the Skokie
well,
ruling?
Reclaiming my time. I know we're over, Mr. Chairman, so I'll land.
No.
I'll land the plane for you. What you're describing is.
He's trying to deflect. He don't want to get into it. No. Yeah, you're about to fuck up what I'm trying to do here. No. Reclaiming my time. You see that?
Is a time when 2 or 3 or a dozen Nazis could march in a neighborhood. Things have changed dramatically when a Nazi with 30 or 40 or 50 million followers can build up a whole platform behind being a Nazi. You don't have to listen to me, look at the data with what's going on in anti-Semitism in Europe and in this country. That's not happening because 20 Nazis marched in a community. It's happening.
Ladies and gentlemen, I guess I'm a Nazi for saying, hey, roughly around 20% of our government, whether they're elected, appointed, or even hired in, roughly around 20% of our government is of the Jewish descent. I'm a Nazi for saying that, I guess, right? Because that's anti-Semitic to bring that up, according to Nadler. Because bringing light to that and being like, hey, this is something that makes up 1.6% of the population shouldn't represent roughly around 20% of our government? I would call that an overrepresentation, would you not? But hey, for elected positions, go ahead. But appointed and, I wouldn't, well, okay, if you're going to do that, I wouldn't even say hired, as far as employed goes. But there needs to be a check as far as that goes. You want to talk about representation, you want to keep a representative of the country. Can we pull that one back? Now, I get it. Israel is the arm of our military. It literally is the front line. Anything we prototype shows up in Israel first. Like the Iron Beam. Which, by the way, was, while they were developing the Iron Beam, they had a thought that if this works, how about scale it up and put it on a satellite and we can defend missiles from space. The Jewish space lasers. Hey, that actually was a thing. That, shout out to Mama J for that. She was the one that actually brought that up. But yeah. But we're getting into this kind of, I don't know if it's panic, but it kind of feels like the same thing with BLM, with this anti-Semitism shit now. Like, you remember Stop Asian Hate? What happened to that? Oh yeah, black people were doing most of the assaults on Asians, so we got to keep that shut. But here we are now. Anti-Semitism, per Nadler, is nebulous and can mean anything that we deem to be offensive. And here he is screaming at the top of his lungs how everybody that's anti-Semitic is a Nazi. Wow. Okay.
Because we're allowing it to proliferate in an online platform. And so I would say, Mr. Chairman, you're right. Freedom of speech is super important. But you guys won the election. I've never seen a team win the game and then go out and be like, the rest. You guys won. It's over.
But do you think
we lost? Biden's back in the basement where you say he lives. We're good.
But Congressman, do you really think that the founders meant for a new media technology like radio or telegraphs to change the First Amendment? I mean, did they write the First Amendment and say, well, but if a future technology comes along, like the telegraph or the television, the radio, then we're going to go ahead and get rid of the First Amendment?
Oh, no, we're not getting rid of it.
But why
Time of
change
the
it?
gentleman has expired. We got others.
Looking forward to more talks later.
Yes. The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
What
In
up, Mama
2020,
Pillow?
What you were viewing on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter wasn't an organic news feed. It was a state-approved news feed
Mr.
curated
Hunt.
by the Biden-Harris administration.
Here you go. Listen up.
This might sound familiar. This news feed is brought to you by Pfizer. This news feed is brought to you by the Biden-Harris administration. This news feed is brought to you by the big Russia lie. And we know it's true because 51 intelligence officers said it was, right? Wrong. Republicans, conservatives, and America First patriots endured years of gaslighting, censoring, demonetization, suspension, debanking, collusion to deplatform, and every restriction of free speech imaginable, all under the Biden-Harris administration. In the past 7 years, we have witnessed the greatest assault on the First Amendment in American history. But remember, the Democrats are the party of preserving democracy, right? We expected this type of censorship from the Biden-Harris administration, but what we didn't know was how coordinated their efforts were with big tech companies like Meta, Amazon, and Twitter. What I want to talk about today are the groups responsible for this censorship. Now, Twitter has been saved thanks to Elon Musk, but Meta remains in the hands of the very people who worked with the Biden administration to silence our voices. I know that Meta recently changed their policies concerning censorship and free speech, but who's to say that those changes will be permanent? Let's talk about Meta's political content figure, which magically disappeared upon the new Trump administration. Will this political content filter magically reappear if the Democrats take back the White House at some point in the very distant future? Will voices like mine and many of my colleagues in this room be suppressed ahead of the midterms? These are all questions that inquiring minds really want to know. Now, you might have noticed that recently Mark Zuckerberg has been on the press tour to repair his pro-censorship image. But those of us who have been subject to censorship, especially this U.S. Congressman, I don't forgive and I don't forget quite so easily. Let's not forget that Meta banned the sitting president of these United States of America from Instagram and Facebook. And interestingly enough, Meta banned President Trump before Biden even took office. So you can't defecate on the president's First Amendment rights and call it chocolate pudding at this point. And just because you give him $1 million ex post facto does not change the fact that you did this and this actually happened. I've seen Democrats on TV for the past week scream, Elon Musk, Musk. It's been quite invigorating, actually. I'm really enjoyed it. And what's funny about it to me is that you're mad at the guy that found the fraud, but not mad at the people that wasted your money. Here in Congress, we clearly can't cut a budget. So I really thank Elon for doing our job for us. Mr. Shellenberger, thank you for being here, sir. As a leader, as a leading expert in the suppression of freedom of speech, what is the most egregious example of censorship from Meta that has occurred during the Biden administration, in your humble opinion?
I mean, probably the censorship of what Facebook itself called true stories of vaccine side effects. These are ordinary moms and dads who are describing the impact of vaccine on their kids, and they were censored without their knowledge and against the opinion of Facebook's own executives who said, if you want to increase vaccine hesitancy, there's no better way to do it than to censor people that are trying to share those stories. I mean, that's the most fundamental kind of conversation that we should be allowed to have between ordinary folks, and Facebook secretly censored it on at the behest of the Biden administration.
Do you see a return to some of the policies that I was referring to with Meta in terms of, you know, the upcoming election, the upcoming midterms, the future? I understand right now it's really cool because President Trump won, so now you want to be in the cool guy club.
But what measures do you think need to be done, or do you see a potential return to that if we don't get this right, in the next, 18 months?
I mean, I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think Zuckerberg, his statements were amazing recently, but of course, he had made similar statements, including defending Holocaust denial on Facebook in 2019. He went back on that he, as you mentioned, he deplatformed the president. So not super reliable. So I do worry about that. I think the most important thing for Congress to do is to find every penny that's going to censorship activities in the federal government, phase them out, and then some investigation to hold the right people accountable. Because I'm with you. I was censored on Facebook for sharing true information as well, and I won't easily forget it.
I was censored on Facebook for sharing memes.
Thank you very much. See you back to the remainder of my time. Thank you, sir.
Gentleman yields back. The mayor of New York.
Okay, let's be honest. I was actually recording conversations and releasing them about a violation of free speech and what people think free speech should actually mean. And by the third one, they ripped my account down permanently. But yeah.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of the 8 hearings on this topic, I do give you credit. This is only the 3rd one with these same witnesses. This one, though, introduces a new wrinkle: censorship by foreign countries, of course, which Congress has no
we're about to have
jurisdiction
some fun.
over. So I do give you.
By the way, this is Dan Goldman. There was a story for Dan Goldman about a process server who couldn't serve eviction papers to Mr. Goldman for an apartment, the only thing that ties him to his district, for failure to pay rent. This motherfucker can't even pay his own goddamn rent for the only thing that ties him down to the district he represents. He don't stay there. Not to mention the fact this is the same dick that in a hearing about the border told a woman whose child had died of fentanyl that she was too stupid to know what high crimes and misdemeanors were because she never went to college.
You some credit because at least the first 2 with them had something to do with our jurisdiction.
Gentleman yield?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now, let's look at what has happened over the past 3 weeks. Donald Trump pardoned more than 1,500 criminals from January 6th, including hundreds who were convicted of assaulting police officers. So much for backing the blue. He tried to freeze all federal funding, SNAP benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, tax refund checks, you name it. He illegally fired senior officials and inspectors general, and even the director of the Office of Government Ethics, because they might, God forbid, provide accountability to the convicted felon in the White House. And the president has given an unelected billionaire total access to the inner workings of every executive branch agency. And he is freely terminating government.
You know, I'm just going to go ahead and say that anybody that worked on that little Russiagate hoax and that shit that was paid for, that every single 51, even what, 51 intelligence agents, the spies who lied, who said it has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation and all that other good shit that happened within all of what you're talking about here, Goldman. Getting rid of them, I agree with. Because they were the ones that were trying to take my First Amendment right and attacked a person who just said, go fuck yourself. Because that's all he did. During his first term, his run for presidency, that's all he said is go fuck yourself. You've been doing a shit job. And you're getting pissy about it. Which is funny because he's fucking right.
Government contracts and government officials. Now, whether you agree or not with whatever Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing, it is a breathtaking and unprecedented usurpation of government power. And instead of Congress actually using its oversight authority to provide a check and balance on this government takeover, the Republican majority is once again here talking about Hunter Biden's laptop, the Twitter files from many years ago, and now a new one, censorship in Europe. Now, when asked about what guardrails there may be on Elon Musk's infiltration of our federal government this past weekend, the chairman said, and I quote, "The guardrails are all you all in the press who are talking about it every day," end quote. The press? The press? What about Congress, Mr. Chairman? Our Constitution places responsibility for oversight and
Look, all they're doing is just going over records, seeing where money is going, what is happening within these agencies that we're just hemorrhaging money from left and fucking right. Seeing where all this shit is very questionable. Making a recommendation, hey, maybe we don't spend this money here. You can cut this shit. And they're freaking the fuck out about this. Especially with this USAID thing. I think we have hit a major bank account for them. This is not the only one. And it's not the biggest one. I guarantee that. But this one, maybe this is like a base on top of a base, you know? Or an outpost if you want to bring it to a gaming kind of thing. It's not the main base, it's just an outpost. Shit's about to get fucking hardcore if that's the case then.
accountability on Congress, not the press. It is almost as if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle wake up in the morning and think, how can I undermine my own power? Let's be very clear. Nobody has any idea what Elon Musk is doing, including the president, including my friend from Texas, who has no idea whether Elon Musk has found fraud or not. And I find it shocking that my Republican colleagues are willing to simply take Elon's word for it. Just yesterday, Mr. Musk admitted that at least some of what he says is incorrect. So even Elon Musk does not take his own word for it. Now, how about this committee investigate Elon Musk's rampant conflict of interest, Mr. Chairman? He has 6 companies that have at least $13 billion of government contracts. And here he is making decisions about what government contracts should be canceled. And I want to introduce, by unanimous consent, an article in the New York Times from yesterday that talks about the 32 ongoing investigations into Elon Musk and his companies. This article outlines how Trump and Musk have fired officials in 11 federal agencies that are leading investigations or enforcement matters or lawsuits pending against Elon Musk. Now, all the investigations have stalled. Lucky Mr. Musk. Can't be the conflict of interest.
Not objection. So enter.
The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has received hundreds of complaints against Tesla. Last week, after Elon Musk gutted that agency that protects everyday Americans against corporate greed, Mr. Musk tweeted, CFPB.
Do we have another goddamn
RIP.
Stein?
Now, these are clear conflicts of interest, and it is clearly within the jurisdiction of this committee to investigate, with our oversight power, the conflicts of interest. And you know what the White House's response is? Let the guy with the conflicts decide if he has conflicts. Just yesterday, Mr. Musk announced that he canceled 89 government contracts worth $881 million in the Department of Education.
This was
That's
a couple
money
of days
Congress
ago.
Appropriated. We have the power of the purse. Maybe it's wasteful, maybe it's not. I have no idea. You have no idea. But it's a blatant violation of the law and the Constitution. And apparently my Republican colleagues are so weak and afraid of Donald Trump and Elon Musk that they're willing to undermine their own constitutional authority just to please them. You're giving away your own power in fealty to Donald Trump. So, Mr. Chairman, I ask that for our next hearing, we actually do some oversight and accountability of what this administration is doing right now, not what the Biden administration did years ago. And I yield back.
You all are all dumb as fuck. There's no reason for your existence. We need to look at what's happening now. Don't look at the shit we did. He didn't ask questions. He just went on a rant. That's your taxpayer dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen. Are you happy with the results?
Gentleman yields back. I would just ask Mr. Shellenberger, if European law results in the censorship of Americans, is that something that the Judiciary Committee should be concerned about?
Yeah, absolutely. And you shared that information this morning on X, the post about the judicial ruling in Europe, which says that they do think they have the right to do that. And we keep seeing this similarly in Australia, where you see these authorities who think that they should be able to censor the entire global internet of disfavored information. So it's very disturbing. And like I said, it really makes you question our alliance with Europe.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent motion.
Gentleman's recognized.
I ask to introduce by unanimous consent a letter from 7 members of Congress, including myself, to Inspector General Michael Horowitz of the DOJ, asking him to investigate egregious conflicts of interest of Acting Deputy Attorney General Emile Bove and Acting United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Ed Martin.
You're asking to enter into a record a letter you sent to who?
To the Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz, one of the very few who was not fired.
Without objection. All right, that's fine. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the committees who have been here for a marathon hearing, there's been a lot of talk about how many of these we've had. This is my first one, and I have been very appreciative about what I've heard from the role that each of you all have played in uncovering what is a truly horrific episode of censorship.
I do want to pause right here real quick and just say this. I am impressed. I am impressed. Jasmine Crockett stayed there the entire fucking time. She was there from the very beginning. I am impressed because usually this bitch walks in, but like the speech right before hers goes off on a fucking rant and then gets up and leaves every damn time. She's been there the entire time. Maybe she doesn't have anything to do. But yeah, her popularity is starting to kind of to wane a little bit. She was there with Fannie fucking Willis when Fannie Willis had that thing about, yay, I'm the DA, praise me, let's have fun. $10,000 a plate if you want to see us. I'm sorry, I must pay $10,000 to talk to a representative or for somebody who doesn't represent me half a country away. For what reason? Especially to talk to Fannie fucking Willis. Y'all have to understand, throughout the trials and everything, she played herself up like she was a big deal. She was sitting there saying things like, I can't go out to eat without everybody saying, hey, you're the DA. You're a badass bitch. Like she played it out like that. No fucking joke. She played it out like that. And you gotta spend $10,000 fucking dollars to eat a plate of some subpar bullshit and be around Fannie Willis and Jasmine Crockett. Not only did you have to be vetted as well, because they do a background check and everything like that too. Oh, you didn't know about that? But yeah.
I saw as a private citizen. Unfortunately, I was not here to help uncover and to fight back against the censorship over the last 3 to 5 years. But nonetheless, I am deeply grateful to this committee and to all of you
for your
past and continued efforts to protect the First Amendment. I must say that I'm somewhat astounded.
Hoping I'm at least making a top
one colleague on the other side of the aisle that has brought themselves to acknowledge, much less criticize, the very obvious and blatant efforts of the Biden administration to suppress information in a very, very problematic anti-First Amendment, and I would argue illegal way. And part of this has been admitted by those who were censored. It's been admitted by those
Jasmine Ratchet
industry who were bullied into removing content. But I want to talk more about what's going on right now. Mr. Shellenberger, I want to start
Representative
with you.
Ratchet from the Houston area.
Within the crosshairs of the censorship industrial complex, and it's a wide variety of actors, agency, contractors, private companies, even universities and so forth. What's the end goal of this censorship that we're seeing, not just here in the United States, but also in places like Brazil where you're being investigated?
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, thank you for asking that question. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear a lot of concerns about who gets to be in the limited space in the Defense Department. By the way, Huffington Post is a left-wing magazine that got in, and Rupa works for a centrist magazine that's in there. It's just not a censorship issue or changing the website. That's pretty ridiculous. I'm actually under criminal investigation in Brazil for expressing true facts on X. That's actually happening right now. Similarly, we see in Europe, very serious penalties for people that supposedly commit the act of misinformation. And then in Canada, there's actually
No. It is actually sexual harassment in Europe to call a bald man bald. That's the way to go. I can bring up the article. It is sexual harassment to call somebody bald.
life imprisonment as a potential punishment for
What's the end of these laws and these efforts? Is it total political power? Is it just the easy eradication of dissent? What is the goal?
Yeah, I mean, total information control is definitely the goal. They want to control the information and also shape how people understand it. That's why they talk about narrative control. And then the other part of it is they want to scare people. They just want people to be afraid to say things online.
So that they can remain in power,
Yeah, absolutely. And you see some of it just in the vanity of politicians demanding that posts about themselves be taken down. But obviously that's important for their political careers. And that's why in Brazil, they've actually banned whole politicians from being online.
And in your estimation, we've obviously heard about information that has been taken down and forcefully removed. But the narrative control also, it brings to mind narratives that are written and pushed into the public sphere. And one thing that's of concern to me is whether it was the Russian collusion narrative, the Russian dossier, the Biden laptop scandal trying to discredit what seemed to be a very obvious, verified piece of evidence, questioning Biden's role in enriching himself. That was made out of bounds. Yeah. Questions about the vaccine, we all are familiar with those, the vaccine's effectiveness, the effect of the vaccine. Looking at the news media, is there a part of this that I would submit to you where the narrative is pushed into various outlets to further the censor's objectives?
Well, yeah, I mean, you see it right now, right? Everybody's saying constitutional crisis. If you just Google that, it's like all over, everybody repeats themselves in the mainstream news media. But look, I mean, we're in a new world now. We have more platforms that are open. I think it's much harder to get away with lying, as the New York Times did last night when it claimed that there was no evidence of fraud for Musk. So I do think it's a new environment, but that's why you have to keep the government from putting pressure on these social media platforms so they can continue to let the conversation.
And just very briefly, is what's happening now with Elon Musk, who is highlighting the waste, fraud, and abuse of USAID and other expenditures, and what happened under the Biden-Harris administration with their censorship efforts, are those two aligned? Are they in any way synonymous with one another?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, in terms of things not changing, when we were here 2 years ago, Elon Musk was the big, the devil, because he was allowing free speech to proliferate on what was then Twitter. And you hear it today. I mean, we heard a lot of people get up today and talk about how they support free speech, but we have to stop all the racism and hate online. Well, that's a call for censorship. I mean, let's just be perfectly clear. If you're calling for censorship of hatred and racism or anti-Semitism online, you're calling for censorship. And that is completely anathema to the American tradition, to our Supreme Court rulings, to Brandenburg and its reinforcement in Skokie. So look, we've had a lot of technological revolutions with different media sources. We had since 1776, 1789, we've had the telegraph, we've had radio, we've had television, now we have the internet. Somehow we've managed to keep our tradition of freedom of speech and the First Amendment alive despite those technological revolutions, after which every single time somebody was saying that, oh, everything has changed and we have to now amend or qualify.
I'm still in shock that if you call someone bald, it's sexual harassment. Calling a man bald is sex-related harassment, employee tribunal rules. Calling a man bald is sex-related harassment, an employee tribunal has ruled. Hair loss is much more prevalent, blah, blah, blah. The ruling made by a panel of 3 men who, in making their judgment, bemoaned their own lack of hair, comes in a case between a veteran electrician and a manufacturing firm where he was employed. Someone called him bald, so he made a sexual harassment claim. And because the panel was bald men, It's sexual harassment. No, this was in the UK, yes, but
Qualify the First Amendment. May I close with one question to you, sir? How is AI going to make it easier or more difficult to apply censorship for political gain? Either or. Yeah.
AI would allow these companies to detect narratives and enforce all of these strictures with much greater speed than we saw in the Twitter files. And the process that they're going through with the DSA, which right now requires huge armies of people to, or what they call trusted flaggers, to go through information personally. They can do that with AI with almost no
hey, I
investment at
guess
all.
guys can do
That's
it too. Y'all women ain't safe.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record, maybe the first time I've ever entered into the record, a New York Times article.
I
but
can't
this is
call you
from,
fat. You can't call me
2 years
bald.
ago. EU law sets the stage for a clash over disinformation. I just want to read one paragraph into the record here too. The law, the Digital Services Act, which Mr. Taibbi just referenced, is intended to force social media giants to adopt new policies and practice to address accusations that they routinely host and through their algorithms popularize corrosive content. If the measure is successful, as officials and experts hope, which has happened, its effects could extend far beyond Europe, changing company policies in the United States and elsewhere. That's where they get the leverage and pressure on the companies to censor Americans. In Europe, don't have it in Brazil, but Mr. Shellenberger has felt it firsthand in Brazil. That's why we're focused on this issue. The gentlelady, Ms. Crockett, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just in case I go over, I just wanted to note that the previous speaker went over by a minute. We've heard a lot
Poor
about
baby.
the fact that Democrats have been talking about
I'll do that
Elon
here in a
Musk.
second.
And let me give you a news
I'll
alert.
start that.
We're not going to stop talking about him. We're going to keep talking about him until he is out of here. Now, if he wants to be elected or appointed and confirmed to something, then so be it. But as of right now, we have somebody that for whatever reason, I don't know if y'all just trying to play in our face because you think we're stupid, or if you literally just cannot see the difference in a George Soros and a Bill Gates. But let me give you a little bit of the difference. Number
Did this bitch say we can't see the difference between a George Soros and a Bill Gates? Texas. Yo, we need to talk. What the fuck is this?
one, George Soros nor Bill Gates ever somehow decided to turn off the spigot of money that was going through to various organizations and agencies to the extent that it had actually been ordered by law that they should have access to it, to the extent that people are dying. There are people that have died as a result of this antic, and there are now farmers that are screaming that they may lose their family farms because we have over $500 million worth of food that is sitting and not going anywhere because of the attempt to shut down U.S. aid. So let me...
300 people got AIDS the day he signed that executive order about that. 300 people got AIDS that day. I'm sorry, I had to do it.
Let me tell you, that is the big difference between the two of them. And let me also tell you that a big difference between Democrats and Republicans is that we don't just say we believe in the Constitution, but we walk it like we talk it. What does that mean? That means that if we believe in the Constitution, we don't just pick out the Second Amendment and say that it is limitless, nor do we pick out the First Amendment and say that it is limitless. The thing about the Constitution is that it has always been a balancing test. There are limits to this. And right now, what we continue to hear from a certain side of the aisle.
I'm sorry, ma'am. There would have to be an amendment to limit this. You want to limit a population from being armed. I've told you all this before. Let's do this. By the Second Amendment, you can't, like, any kind of any kind of restriction, any kind of lawfare, any kind of law whatsoever put in place for the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is unconstitutional. But the things we agree on, we let ride. Should we have the ability to have nuclear weapons? By all accounts, yes. Is that a good idea? No. Because I'd have glass floored this fucking place a long time ago. So see, we shouldn't have that capability. But we should have the ability. Which is a scary kind of concept, because then it always goes back to, well, should you be able to put a gun in a baby's hand? By all rights, yes. Is that a smart ass idea? No. So we don't do it. And for anybody that does do it, there needs to be some kind of penalty, because that's too fucked in the head. But yeah, even the things that we agree on are actually unconstitutional when it comes to any kind of means of defending ourselves. We covered a story where a dude was making fucking, it was because, during the little Las Vegas thing, like in a 48-hour period, I found 8 different stories where they were talking about explosives, including one where back in December, early mid-December or something like that, the dude had like the biggest stockpile of explosives in US fucking history. He's already had fingers blown off from accidents. This motherfucker could have blown his entire neighborhood out. And they're talking about letting him go. And I'm just like, again, maybe we shouldn't let that. He had the most volatile substance as far as explosives can make. You have to keep it at a certain temperature and keep it regulated, because even molecules rubbing together as they warm up can set this shit off. It was duct taped up, not even labeled. The only thing is that it was labeled as is do not eat. It was set in a refrigerator where children's food was. Should we let people like that be able to do that? Fuck no. But making a law to say you can't do that technically is unconstitutional. Just saying.
Is that there are no limits to this lawlessness. In fact, there are limits. And I can tell you that one of those limits typically is around hate crimes. You may or may not know that when it comes down to it, if somebody decides that they want to send something hateful in, say, the US mail, they can actually go to prison for that, up to 5 years in prison. So yes, there are always going to be limits. So
she did it right after me.
Talk about Trump and him being pulled down on any platform. This just happened to be after he incited an insurrection. This just happened to be after, in a bipartisan way.
Was it an insurrection or an erection? I don't know. Chuck Schumer said it. Who was that? Jayapal said it. Jayapal. Yeah, it was Jayapal. It was Shovelface that said he incited an erection as well. What is it? Was it an insurrection or an erection? I don't know.
This particular chamber decided that they were going to impeach him. So there was something a little different about what he did, because as we know, it led to people actually dying. But let's talk about who's doing the nefarious things with the tech giants.
Yep.
Because I don't think that one side of the aisle is promoting truth, but sometimes it may seem a little treasonous. All right, so
I'm going to pull that the fuck back. But again, how much money do you think was made for that sign? Because they did a whole bunch of editing. That was a fair amount of work between people to find out exactly quotes, pulling all that information, designing a picture of that, making the background transparent. Choosing the background that you want to display to make it look the what was it, the malicious and vile or something like that from from our reading with just Rhonda? Like, they're making the Varuna system sound like that? How much work you think we went into that? How much money you think that was to have that printed? Your taxpayer dollars. I want to roll it back. Because she's bringing up Massie. Hold up. Massie said this is borderline treason with all these payments going to places that are known for terrorism and everything. So what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Right before she turns, she hears it. You can hear it. Hold on.
Chamber decided that they were going to impeach him. So there was something a little different about what he did, because as we know, it led to people actually dying. But let's talk about who's doing the nefarious things with the tech giants. Because I don't think that one side of the aisle is promoting truth, but sometimes it may seem a little treasonous. All right, so we've got...
It may seem a little treasonous. Let's hear this one out.
This article right here about this guy. Meta says it will end its fact-checking program on social media posts.
Who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy, Crockett? Crockett shit. Representative Ratchet. Who the fuck is that guy?
I'll talk about that a little bit later. Then
all right, I'm going to shut up and not pause, but we got this guy with this post. I'm going to talk about that a little later. Then we got this guy with this post. Check this shit out.
Truth, but sometimes it may seem a little treasonous. All right, so we've got this article right here about this guy. Meta says it will end its fact-checking program on social media posts. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Then we have Washington Post says it will not endorse a candidate for president. We also know that actually they absolutely intended to endorse Kamala Harris.
What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?
And we have Washington Post says it will not endorse a candidate for president. We also know that actually they absolutely intended to endorse Kamala Harris. We have this one.
I guess
Google
it
Maps
stuttered on
now
my side.
show Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico for app users in the United States, which is a complete farce because it's the Gulf of Mexico. It always has been. And we know that the AP got kicked out yesterday because they refused to buy into this lie, because that's all y'all really want to promote is lies. That's the big issue that we have. Elon Musk.
I want y'all to understand. The other two, she was just being a bitch about. We'll go ahead and talk about that later. But what triggered her was the Gulf of America. She's pissed now.
Boosted false USA conspiracy theories to shut down global aid. Now, while he was boosting those lies about US aid, and he was stopping money going for, say, things such as Head Start, somehow the only money that didn't stop was the money to him and his organization. Now, I don't know how you can have him be the watchdog as well as the guy that is literally living off of the government. If we want to talk about government welfare, it looks like Elon Musk, because it's my understanding.
This motherfucker's catching rockets with sticks, boring big-ass tunnels underground, shoving satellites into space for low-latency satellite internet with some badass fucking speeds, and putting chips in people's fucking brains. He's living off government welfare, everybody. Texas, we have a problem. Musk scares the shit out of me too, but this bitch scares me fucking worse.
Understanding that just on yesterday, a new contract was approved for approximately $300 million for Elon Musk. So listen, I just want y'all to be honest. You want to sit here, you want to lie, because so often we hear, well, yeah, we did lie. In fact, he admitted that he lied when he was in the Oval Office yesterday. But if it's a lie that will get you into office, such as saying, I know nothing about Project 2025, yet on...
You gotta love that, right? We've brought it up. It was on the Culture War. One of the authors of Project 2025 said Trump had nothing to do with this. Oh, they had staffers that wrote something that was included in this shit. Most of the people that wrote, it's a fucking Republican think tank, and it's been there for what, 25, 26 fucking years now? And they do it every fucking year. But Project 2025. Goddamn. I hate people.
Day one, you literally do everything that you can to implement it, including making sure that you put, say, one of the main architects of Project 2025 over the OMB. It's okay, so long as you get the power that you seek. The problem is that the game is going to be on the American people. And when I say the American people, I mean all of us. Unfortunately, I am also stuck in the twilight zone because of the lies that were allowed to be propagated. Just like when you're talking about vaccines and all this nonsense. Right now in my state of Texas, there is an outbreak of measles. And what they are finding is that because there's been so much disinformation about vaccines, that kids are sick right now with measles that they did not have to have if they just trusted doctors and experts instead of randoms online. So I will end by saying this, Mr. Chairman, because I know we believe in Jesus in this chamber. In John 8:32, it says, the truth shall set you free. So maybe we should focus on a little bit of truth in this chamber. I'll yield.
What is truth? Because every damn thing you've ever said in committee hearings, okay, not every damn thing. I'm going to say about 95% of it. Anything you have ever said in committee hearings was about Donald Trump and racism. And now you've traded Donald Trump for Elon Musk. And you've done the dumbest shit possible. Hey, did she ever talk about the article she said I'm going to come back to after she read the title about this guy? I don't think she did.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the chairman for having this hearing. Might be the most important hearing.
Texas, you got problems.
Session. I think it's sad that we've had some of the members on the other side of the aisle talk about how this is a minor matter and we should spend more time talking about bird flu. But in any event, thank you for having the hearing. The public should again and again hear about the danger to the First Amendment that's going on, because I know when it comes to election season, they poll stuff and they do insist, spend more time talking about the price.
People equal shit.
Somebody trying to take away the First Amendment. But let's talk a little bit about some other countries so we see where we may be headed. Mr. Shellenberger, could you elaborate a little bit more about what's going on in Brazil and how it affects this country?
Sure. I mean, Brazil is, there's a lot of lessons that are important from Brazil. I mean, the first is that it makes you appreciate the First Amendment and that it was written in such an unqualified way. I mean, you may know Alexander Hamilton didn't think we needed a First Amendment because it was redundant. We did it anyway because people that created this country really believed in it. In Brazil, the Constitution does not provide that level of protection. There's too many qualifications. What you're hearing from this side of the aisle today is that, we got to qualify the First Amendment in all these ways. The Supreme Court has made it very clear what those qualifications are. So you've got a constitution that allows for the Supreme Court to engage in just ridiculous levels of censorship. They've now
You may like when
some politicians
we get
from
to
every
talk to
single
Gothic.
social media platform. They've also sought to they've frozen people's banks accounts for things that they've done that would have been considered a First Amendment right in the United States. As you see, they've targeted foreigners like myself for publishing inconvenient information. So yeah, Brazil is a warning for us, I think, about what can go wrong if you stop believing in the essential importance of free speech.
By the way, commenting on the last questioner, is hateful speech free speech?
No, absolutely not. That was inaccurate. I mean, you can say hateful things, you can mail hateful things. I think what the congressperson was referring to is that it's illegal to threaten people, as it should be. Just like the line at Brandenburg and Skokie is the immediate incitement to violence. I agree with those Supreme Court rulings. You should not be allowed to physically threaten somebody, just like the Nazis, in Skokie, if they had said, okay, let's all go burn that house down, that would have been illegal, that form of speech. But it's pretty clear where the line is. I think most high school students, junior high school students could understand where the distinction is.
Oh, they take that. It's not against the law to hate.
Of course, how could it be? It's everybody has hatred in their heart.
Okay. Ms. Sabriana, could you elaborate on what's going on in Canada? I think most of our lifetime, we think of Canada as almost being a cleaner version of the United States. So we can maybe learn some lessons as to what could happen here from what's happening in Canada.
Well, what's happening in Canada right now is that there's a political crisis, and that's the only reason why some of these very pernicious pieces of legislation are just, Parliament is suspended, so they've died as a result. But there's nothing to stop a next government, liberal government, from bringing them back to life. I want
to chamber like
to me is it's indicative.
like Canada's parliament does. I think that'd be fun. It's like literal WWE.
We would be shocked if it happened here.
Well,
that
I
they're
mean,
trying to
for example, I can give you the example of the truckers' protest in 2022, where peaceful protest was shut down by the prime minister, by the government, by invoking the Emergencies Act, and protesters were driven out of the city. They couldn't protest government overreach, and it was government overreach that ultimately got them out. And to make matters worse, many of these people had their bank accounts frozen. This Chinese social credit system had finally come to Canada, was finally in the West, and that's already happened. And since then, there have been a series of attempts to pass through legislation for, as I mentioned in my remarks, if you're praising fossil fuels, for example, a private member's bill suggested that people should go to prison for that. I mean, it's extraordinary.
We have to be on the ball here in future elections so that when politicians go down that route, they're done. We'll find another Democrat, we'll find another Republican, somebody who goes down that path. It's just perceived to be beyond the pale.
No, I'll tell you why this is important. It goes back to that question from the congressman. Why are we having these hearings? And you need to have more of these hearings. There's a stunning statistic from 2023 from the Pew survey. 39% of Americans in 2018 supported restrictions on false information, what they think is false information or violent content online. That number has gone up to 55%. That's extraordinary. So these hearings are crucial to letting people know why it is vital to have to protect free speech and to defend the First Amendment.
And to go over in general some of the things that were done by the last administration. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The ranking member has a UC.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. 3 quick UC requests. One from the New Republic, February 16, 2024, entitled Twitter Files' Matt Taibbi says Elon Musk sent him unhinged messages. Number 2 from Just Security, February 6, 2025, connecting the dots, Donald Trump's tightening grip on press freedom. And finally, February 11, 2025, CNN, Musk touts DOGE transparency, but downplays his conflicts of interest.
Without objection, gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Chairman, some of our Democrat colleagues have said that this hearing is a waste of time, that this hearing is a dumb hearing. Ronald Reagan said our freedoms are never more than one generation away from extinction. I cannot think of a more important topic for a hearing than this one right here to defend our First Amendment. Mr. Shellenberger, I was very glad to hear you mention that it used to be that the left and right were in agreement on the topic of free speech. I'm not quite old enough to remember, but in the 60s, 70s, the campus radicals called their movement the free speech movement. Boy, the radical left does not seem to believe in free speech today. And the free speech, the censorship that we've seen over the last few years, by and large, it's been censorship of true information. For all the words about here from the Surgeon General confronting health misinformation, and from also from the Surgeon General, a community toolkit for addressing health misinformation. What was this misinformation? The origin of the virus as a lab leak, the inefficacy of the vaccine, natural immunity, complications of the vaccine like myocarditis, but not limited to myocarditis, the extraordinarily low morbidity and mortality of young, healthy people, especially children, from the COVID vaccine, and therefore the lack of need to vaccinate those kids, and the lack of efficacy for masks. It was by and large true, but it was censored aggressively, and the two of you, of course, exposed that in the Twitter files. In fact, as Mark Zuckerberg told Joe Rogan what Elon Musk did with the Twitter files, Jim Jordan and the House Judiciary Committee did for the rest of our industry. Mr. Taibbi, you're an expert on the topic of.
I don't know who this is. I've never heard this guy, but he just called him Mr. Taibbi. Mr. Taibbi. You just, sir, you missed an entire syllable in that. Like, I just looked up and it's just like, Mr. Under. Like, you sound like everybody else. I get you. Kind of, I was listening, but I didn't know who it was. And then I looked up and I read the name and I was like, what? I've never heard this dude. And he's just like, Mr. Taibbi. All right. Sorry, that threw me off. Jennifer, thank you for the $1 dono. You're doing great. No need to shout out. Shut up.
Censorship. A Democrat earlier asked you the question, is banning books censorship? And you said yes. And I, of course, would agree. Are you aware of the Trump administration trying to ban any books?
No, not particularly, no.
I think sometimes we have to make distinctions here. Would you consider, in your opinion, is keeping pornography and other sexually explicit material away from children, is that censorship?
It's a completely different section of the law as far as I understand.
Yeah, I would think so. And in your opinion,
I don't know.
Is a presidential administration, cutting funding to rogue programs to promote transgender ideology when Congress never expressed that intent? Is that censorship?
No, I don't consider that censorship. Maybe controversial, but it's not
controversial indeed. But I don't view that as censorship. Again, we see that this idea of misinformation. Not only is it.
Okay, I got you. Hold up. Jennifer, check this shit out. Apparently, no one knows, but it does seem like it's of Sicilian and Lebanese origin. Check this out. The surname Taibbi has had an interesting and complex origin. Mike Taibbi, born Lori and Amos Denny, was adopted by Salvatore and Greta Taibbi, whose surname is of Sicilian and Lebanese origin. However, Mike Taibbi is not of Sicilian or Lebanese descent himself because his father was adopted. His biological mother was mixed of Filipino and Native Hawaiian descent, while his father was likely an American serviceman. Matt Taibbi, Mike's son, has also claimed Irish descent through his mother. The surname Taibbi, therefore, has a diverse background reflecting the complex family histories of both Mike and Matt Taibbi. I apologize to you, Matt, but the Taibbi name has become a synonym for cultural mutt. I mean, you're a mix of everything, right? Welcome to the party, pal.
Censoring misinformation. Not only is it contrary to
That
the
was a
First
fun
Amendment,
rabbit hole.
but my background is I am a medical doctor. In fact, the name of my specialty is allergy and clinical immunology. I'm an immunologist. So to me, and we learned in like first year of medical school that the purpose of a vaccine is to mimic a natural
And
infection.
he's good at
without
what he
getting the
does.
patient sick or
Not
killing
gonna
the
lie.
patient, and therefore inducing the immune response. So natural immunity made sense to me. But Marty McCary testified about censorship during the COVID pandemic.
The sad thing is, I can see myself looking like that at his age. However, I may not look like a thumb. I'm sorry. Like when he sits a certain way, he looks like somebody just like the tip of a thumb. You know, you can't see like his neckline meets up with his jawline, and it's just like his head is rounded, and all you see is just like a U shape all the way down to his shoulder. I'm not trying to rag on the man. I see these kinds of things in people, and I'm just like, that's all I see now.
That over 200 studies have shown natural immunity is at least as effective as vaccinated immunity. And one of those 200 studies was his study, but big tech censored that as well as a lot of these other studies. That's why when I heard Dr. Fauci talk about the science, the whole point of science is that you don't label things misinformation, because science isn't a thing. Science isn't like the Bible or the Quran or the Talmud. The science is a process. You make observations, you design an experiment. Based on those observations, you test that hypothesis, and then you repeat the process. So to me, it's unscientific. It's against the First Amendment, and a violation of all of our core principles to censor. But thanks to you three for what you've done to defend the First Amendment and really defend the most essential of our rights. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to say to all of you on the panel, thank you for your patience and your perseverance. I was speaking at a program one time, and a gentleman next to me looked at me and asked
Y'all
me
remember
if I would
that
stay until the
that
bitter
story
end. I said,
about
"Son,
that
I am the
Satanist
bitter end."
statue that was
And
destroyed?
I feel like I'm in that role today, Mr. Chairman. So
Yeah, y'all remember that story about that Satanist statue that was destroyed? I forgot where that was, but there was a Satanist statue that was put up, and somebody went in there and just ripped it the fuck down. Turned out he was like a veteran or some shit. And everybody's just like, nah, whatever happened to that? I never followed that one through, but that was just wild as shit, man.
But anyway, let me say this. On July 19th, 2021, following directives from the Biden White House to suppress so-called misinformation about vaccines, YouTube removed a video by Family Research Council's Tony Perkins that featured him interviewing Mary Holland, who was serving as the general counsel of Children's Health Defense.
I don't remember either.
Because the topic
I know it
included
happened, but
the
I can't
mention
remember
of the
details about it.
COVID-19 vaccination program, YouTube claimed that the news segment contained, quote, medical misinformation, end quote. However, the whole topic of the interview was the lawsuit that Holland was bringing against the Washington, D.C. City Council regarding parental consent. Initially, the appeals to restore the video were absolutely denied. And ultimately, the video was restored, but it was 3 days after FRC brought it to the attention of the press. I want to just pose the question to you, Mr. Taibbi. At least the Family Research Council had a platform to fight back against this censorship. During your investigative reporting for the Twitter files, were you seeing a lot of examples of just ordinary Americans being censored?
It was Iowa.
Congressman, yes, absolutely. And that's the
Yeah. It was Iowa. Yeah, apparently the Satanic Temple or something like that had sued to put their statue up in their courthouse. And a veteran came in, ripped that shit the fuck down, destroyed that, and they arrested him and tried to lock him up. I don't know if the dude went to prison or anything like that. I don't know what happened with that. But yeah, that was in Iowa. The Satanic, let me throw this up here for you guys. The Satanic Temple of Iowa put up a holiday display in the Iowa State Capitol building, igniting outrage from religious groups and fierce debate over free speech. But the state officials claim that the display followed all regulations and have allowed it to remain in place. And this dude just runs up in there and just fucking demolishes it. And they arrested him for like vandalism and there was other ones. What was it, like discrimination of religion or some shit like that? There was a whole bunch of other charges, but I don't remember anything that ever happened past that point because I was like, that's the stupidest shit I've ever heard. I'm agnostic, but even that shit offended me, you know?
the big difference with the system and the old system, which was litigation based, and you had a chance to present your case to a judge or a jury. You mentioned the Family Research Council, our Children's Defense, Health Defense. Amusingly, Joe Biden himself was censored because he talked so much about vaccines that Facebook's algorithm pushed him down accidentally, which triggered a response from the White House. But of course, they can do something about it. They could get on the phone and talk to Facebook and complain about it. The ordinary person just can't do that. They just wake up one morning and they find they're off the internet. In some cases, the first cases that I looked at were basically mom and pop small media businesses. Like there was a site called Reverb Press that was a down the line Democratic site. Just woke up one morning, was gone. It was off the internet, and they have no recourse. And that's the problem with the system. There's just, for wealthy people, for famous people, they can maybe do something about it, but nobody else can.
So absent legislation like the First Amendment Accountability Act, what recourse is there for Americans?
You can try to find somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who maybe knows an executive. That's basically it.
That's basically it. Well, thank you. Well, Mr. Shellenberger, let me ask you, when Mr. Musk purchased Twitter, which is now X, he implemented the concept of community notes as an alternative to traditional fact-checking. On January 7th, 2025, Mark Zuckerberg announced that Meta would, among other policy changes, implement an X-inspired community notes model for its platform. I know you've expressed support for this policy change, and can you just take a few moments in the time I have left to explain why the community note system is preferable to traditional fact-checking methods in terms of facilitating free and open dialogue online?
I mean, community notice is in the spirit of the
Unfortunately, you're
First Amendment,
right.
that truth is not something,
And that's
truth is something
scary.
that emerges through disagreement and dialogue.
Because that
including
should be
through
things every
false
citizen
information, and
does.
We get at what the true information is. So community notes is consistent with that. It doesn't allow small groups of experts who think they're experts to decide what the truth
Take it
is in
easy,
advance
Marlene.
and
We'll
then
see you
apply
again.
it into the world. So look, you
Have your
don't really
husband listen
need
along
community
too.
notes. You can have somebody can reply to an X post and say this is wrong for these reasons, and it can go viral. But if you're going to have some kind of fact checking, community notes is obviously the superior model. And in fact, I think the studies that have been done show that it does tend to be a fairly reliable way to get to the to get to the truth.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And again, thanks you to all of you on the panel. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. We're almost there. The chair now recognizes the ranking member for some closing remarks, and then I'll close.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for a fascinating hearing, and all of our colleagues and the witnesses for hanging with us. You know, I taught constitutional law and the First Amendment for 25 years, Mr. Chairman, and I used to tell my students that the First Amendment's like an apple, and everybody wants to take one bite out of the apple. Somebody doesn't like left-wing speech, take a bite. Somebody doesn't like right-wing speech, take a bite. Somebody doesn't like DEI speech, take a bite. Somebody doesn't like gender ideology speech, take a bite. And everybody takes just one bite out of the apple, and at the end of it, you know what's left? Nothing. The apple's gone. It's been gobbled away, which means that we've got a responsibility to defend free speech in its entirety. Now, the hearing we've had today has been fascinating in a lot of ways. I do think that it ran roughshod over some basic constitutional distinctions that we do talk about in the First Amendment, like whether we're in a public forum or a non-public forum, a limited public forum, a private space, and all of that somewhat got stampeded in the political theatrics at different points. But one thing that struck me was the fundamental agnosticism I hear from a lot of my colleagues about whether something called the truth even exists anymore. And we are the products of an Enlightenment constitution by people who really believed in the idea of facts and empirical investigation. In fact, our entire judicial system is based on that idea. When people go and testify in court, they swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then we have whole standards of evidence that are organized around whether or not the case has been made. In criminal court, have you been able to prove the facts so intensely that it's beyond any reasonable doubt? Or in civil court, by a preponderance of the evidence. And so our judicial system is based on the idea that there is the truth. If you think about it, Mr. Chairman, our democratic system is based on the idea that there's the truth. I heard people today and in other contexts saying, well, no, we don't want to take down Russian disinformation on social media sites telling people to go and vote on Wednesday, November 9th, if the election is Tuesday, November 8th. That's a violation of free speech, as opposed to just a lie and a fraud perpetrated on the public. But think about it. We don't have democracy if we don't have a concept of truth and the facts, because at the end of the day, Donald Trump might not like it, but there is an election and somebody wins and somebody loses. And he couldn't handle the fact that he lost in 2020 for whatever reasons, financial, ideological, psychological, emotional, I don't know. He lost by more than 7 million votes, 306 to 232 in the election. And the vexed politics and the divided, polarized culture of our time all has to do with his inability to accept that, and then his inciting a violent mob to come and attack our police officers and wound them and hospitalize them and tear the country apart. But the reality is, at the end of every election, we decide the fact of who won and who lost. And the inability to accept facts and the idea that there are truths is a very dangerous.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to shut this dude up. I'm just going to shut out the little Discord right here because Jennifer just said she had like some kind of what is it? Trypophobia or something like that. It's a fear of holes. So I posted a picture of holes. I love you, Jennifer.
Dangerous thing for American democracy or any other democracy. And I'll just say finally, Mr. Chairman, there's an attack going on the media. I'm sorry that some of my colleagues didn't deal with the fact that, yes, President Trump has started to ban this media entity, to punish these various newspaper groups, to bring lawsuits for tens of millions of dollars on totally bogus, fraudulent defamation charges, and then forcing those media entities to settle with him as a form of financial and political tribute to the state. What is this? Castro's Cuba? North Korea? Come on. Could we get together on a bipartisan basis to reject that? Do we really have to be so stuck in our partisan encampments that we can't see that as a shakedown by the state against the people? So let's stand up for real, if we could, in this Congress, Mr. Chairman, for the freedom of speech, for the freedom of press, for the right to petition.
Yeah, I got to join the Discord.
Redress of grievances, for the freedom of assembly, for the free exercise of a religion, and for no establishment of a religion. Let's at least converge around that. And I thank you for your indulgence. And
Jennifer knows I'm just having fun.
Gentlemen, it's back. I would just say, first of all, thank you all for being here. To just in response briefly, I'm all for
there we go.
getting the facts and the truth. And the way you get there is robust debate. It's the First Amendment.
In all honesty, it freaks me the fuck out too when I see those pictures. So I understand.
His case seems right until another comes along and questions him. It's called the principle of cross-examination. That's basically the First Amendment. One person says one thing, another person says something else, and we can figure out the truth and the facts. You're just getting one side, and again, from left or right in a political context, that's the problem. I'm for the full apple, to use your metaphor. What I know is, I don't know Mr. Aaron's background, but I know these three people, for defending the full apple, to use your metaphor again, they've been harassed for doing it. Mr. Taibbi had the IRS knock on his door, for goodness sake. He had a Democrat member of Congress threaten to refer him to the Justice Department for prosecution, for goodness sake. Mr. Shellenberger's a wanted man in Brazil for standing up for the truth, for the facts. In fact, I'm going to ask a question here. Ms. Subramania, I know what you did during the trucker blockade. I know how you've testified. I know, my guess, I don't know specifically, my guess you've been harassed and
I'm
targeted
waiting
as
for
well
it.
for your defense of the truth and the full apple, to stick with Mr. Raskin's.
Absolutely. A few months after I wrote my story for the Free Press on the truckers' protest, in June of 2022, I found myself in a study on a list of people, people where the author, a professor at a university in Calgary, which is a city in the province of Alberta, a federally funded study basically was accusing me of spreading Russian disinformation.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary. And I was featured on this list with Tulsi Gabbard and a bunch of
Yeah,
other.
we know that whole spiel.
Yeah, and so when I saw my name on this list,
Rumble
I was
guys, get up in that
absolutely
Discord.
horrified, because that is the chilling effect of.
So here are three individuals who value the First Amendment and the truth so much that they're willing to face the attacks that they've faced. Value the freedom of the press, freedom of speech, the rights we enjoy as Americans. So I want to thank you all for being here. You included, Mr. Aaron, but I especially want to thank you three.
Thank you.
Because it's been I know over the last several years, what you've had to endure and your willingness to come back again. And we're going to have you back again at some point, because I don't think 9 hearings is enough on the First Amendment. I think, as Mr. Grothman said, we should do this every single week, because if you lose the First Amendment, you lose the right to debate, everything else falls apart, just the way it works. And so, again, thank you all for being here today. The committee is adjourned.
I don't, like I said, that was a long one. It took actually 2 days to do. I cannot believe that after all this time, after everything that happens, there's not a single fucking Democrat that had any point to make except yelling about Elon Musk. I don't think anybody made any real point. Not even Correa, which I'm surprised about, because maybe he most of the time he actually does make some good points, but I don't think there was a single one. That's your taxpayer dollars at work for them to sit there in these committee hearings, make these speeches for their social media to get elected. But when you really listen to them, when you see what's going on, you hear this. This is about the censorship industrial complex. Did they stay on point? These are the things I listen to, America. I listen to this shit as much as I can. And it is a daunting task. It's going to be very fucking daunting. I'm going to be working overtime, figuring shit with all this. But yeah. There was another one that we will be getting into very, very soon. I don't know. Maybe it might turn out to be a Sunday, Monday kind of thing. It's a long one as well, but it's kind of important. What was it? That was the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Live. Copy. Let me bring it to you here so you can see that too. USAID. Oh, I guess I should hit that. USAID betrayal from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Again, this thing's like 5 hours long, so we'll probably have to separate this into 2 different things. But I listened to a good amount of this too. And it's just as disgusting as what you guys have just listened to here recently. I do want to bring these things to you while I got the chance. You know, when we're doing these things, like Davey can't join me on something, but I still want to continue to bring this to you guys. Still continue to pump out something, especially on off label. These things right here are actually kind of important because this is where your bills come from. These are these conversations and everything. So House Rules Committee, Foreign Affairs Committee, all these things. This is what your representatives are actually saying. And when you pay attention to it, it's kind of really disgusting, ladies and gentlemen. But when we do this, we'll bring this more to you, kind of like in this kind of format, very long form, very, very just cut up. Of course, I'm going to squirrel out while I do this. I'm going to enjoy talking to you guys, hitting you up in the chat while we listen to things like this. And I'm definitely going to push back every chance I get. But this one's going to be next. The USAID betrayal from House Foreign Affairs Committee. I'll set it up for tomorrow. We'll do a half tomorrow night, and then half Monday night. We'll finish that out. But for right now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hop. This is what I do in the readings with Rhonda. For right now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hop off here. I want to go play Civilization 7. I'm going to set up Stupid's Play for that. We're going to go ahead and jump into that. And I just feel like chilling for the rest of the night. I don't know. I may throw something else on while we're doing that, but I kind of want to get into the game and see what it's about and kind of give my critique about it and see what that goes, because there's a lot of controversy going around about you select your leader and then you select your civilization. So you could play as like Harriet Tubman controlling the Chinese civilization. It's weird. I don't know how that is. We're about to just launch it for the very first time over there on the Stupid's Play. If you want to go see what all that is about, let me bring it up for you. Give me a second. Shit. It will be on Rumble only, because that's the only connection I stay on with the gaming thing, because I do some things that just occupy my time, including watch movies and things like that. But let me see. I got that, and that is over there on Rumble. The Stupid's Play, the Rumble link over there on YouTube for you guys. I'm gonna hit that up. We're gonna be playing some Civilization 7, get into that, and critique it a little bit along the way. I appreciate every single one of you. Like I said, I'm going to pull up on a lot more content and everything for this. And we're going to have Davey get back into the swing of things. Scott's going to be back in the swing of things. Scott's actually going to be joining just Rhonda in her readings as well with these case hearings. And again, y'all need to check out Just Rhonda's channel here coming up very soon, because me and Jennifer had one badass reading through the court trials that she's going with of Octopus Holtz. Why is words? Officer Holtzclaw. I swear it's like this when I'm reading with her. Jennifer or Rhonda. Take those clips of these mistakes, make an outtake. Well, we will see you all later, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the fuck out of every single one of you. It's time for me to enjoy having fun and playing games. Peace out.
Comes a president. We can't start our own little
I have a
business here.
dream, that's all I need. I'll make it happen with some work and belief. Know what I want, so I'll take it on. I've made mistakes, but mistakes make you strong. Let's break it down for a minute. I want the crown, I'm gon' get it. You hear me loud, man, I'm winning. Yeah, Charlie Sheen will be grinning. These ladies know that I'm sinning, and this is just the beginning. I'm closing in the night inning. There ain't no point in resisting. Living life like a dream, live it right, that's the thing. Every night got a team, I've been tied to the scene. Out on stage, hear them scream. Okay, it's a dream, and I pray as a team. One day it'll be me. If I want it, then I'll get it. Head down, don't and regret it. Push myself to the limit, if I play it then I win it. I'm just saying, I'm just living for today, for a minute. I don't stay, I just visit, have no shame, I admit it. Looking right at me to see if I succeed, to see if I believe. They're looking up to me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.